The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome in Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Jacob Tissett, Elliot Rearing, and Mr. Casey McAllister in the producer chair, of course. But we welcome you in. A ton to dive into here today, and excited to be with each and every one of you. I'm already stumbling over my words. But Casey, we'll start with you. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing good. Doing all right. Had a good Monday. Yeah. It was a pretty good Monday. Got to do the coaches show, Ross's coaches show. And then I watched some MLS playoffs, FC. I got to watch the back half of that. And
all 5 major sports were on TV, and you watched soccer.
That's right. And then I got to watch the end of football, Monday Night Football. So overall, good night.
There you go. Mr. Elliott, good morning. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm fine. I woke up, and I'm here. What's up, dog?
Those are always
What's up, dog?
Those are always my main goals each day. Wake up, get to work. Well, maybe not get to work. Sometimes if something distracts me from getting to work, that's fine too.
Yeah.
But Jacob, round us up. How's your day going already this far?
Yeah, it's fine. Not happy to see the next 2 days are like 80 degrees. It's late October. I'm supposed to be able to be wearing hoodies and sweatpants, but no, it's 60 degrees when I wake up this morning. It's going to be 80 by the time
It's
I
that
leave.
global warming I hear about.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
The globe keeps warming, and it's because of you, Kinner.
Like, I'm fine with that because I can get back out and golf.
That's right. That's right. I've heard you're a really good golfer.
Yeah, I'm not a good golfer.
You
but
need
the
to be on
weather
the
is
golf
good
course. You need to be on it.
You're getting a little pale over here. I need to get some sun. So, there you go. But ton to get into today. You guys are going to become head coaches today, by the way.
That's right.
You are going to become head coaches of the Cincinnati Bengals, and you are going to tell me right now, knowing that your front office is not going to throw you any lifeline or support whatsoever. What you have is what you have to work with. What adjustments, what are you going to do as head coach to fix this Bengal team in season? We'll discuss that coming up here shortly. A little more likely that we'll dive into coming up as well. A couple more likely scenarios, college football, Major League Baseball. I think, what else? Oh, some NFL. Yeah, so just football.
Yeah, the Series of Champions is going to end in a sweep. Yippee.
How about that?
Nothing says baseball like ending the season on a 4-game sweep with the best team in the world.
You get the Yankees and Dodgers,
Woo!
And it's about to be over before it even starts.
Yeah, that's right.
So, how about Fat Joe?
How about him?
Yeah, how
Coming
about
out.
that? That
Like-
was interesting. They're like, we saw Ice Cube be good, and now we're going to get this guy, and he's going to be bad. I guess that was the plan there. I mean, I'm okay with the pregame concert, like, for the fans. Like, I'm okay with it. But, like, you should probably find somebody that can, like, perform.
And not just that, but someone that's relevant from
Yeah,
today.
like, no disrespect to
I mean, it's the
Fat
world.
Jake. What's his name?
Oh, come on. No need.
Fat Joe?
He's
need.
lost some weight. Joe is what his name is.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Not as Fat Joe from back in the day. But no, like, it's New York. You're the New York Yankees. You gonna get Jay-Z to come out? You like
Yeah.
why Fat Joe? No offense to him, but why Fat Joe? You Ice Cube. I understood that. I
Ice Cube
understood
makes
that
sense.
completely.
And he was great.
He was good.
But you countered with Fat Joe.
Fat Joe's something. That was certainly a choice, and they made it, and he performed.
Nonetheless. I mean, couldn't they just have hyped up Beyonce coming and just have her speak and not perform? Like, couldn't they just have done that? I think they would have disappointed less people if they would have done it that way.
She's been speaking a lot lately.
She's a big speaker. Not much of a singer. I
No.
would never hire her to sing. I would only have her show up just to speak. There you go. But Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Let's kick off the show with Elliot's headlines.
Whoa.
Elliot
Whoa.
loves 3 things: Joey Votto, David Bell, and leading off the bench with top headlines.
Yeah,
Remember
no,
2 months ago when we said we were changing that intro?
yeah, we're going to leave it the same. And also, like, there's not a ton of headlines, but I'm going to read some of them out loud. Monday Night Football, obviously, if you missed the game last night, Steelers, they win again. They beat the Giants 26-18. Russell Wilson, 20 for 28, 278 yards and a touchdown. Najee Harris, he ran 19 times for 114 yards. Pickens had 4 catches for 74 yards as well. Russell Wilson's good, man. I mean, credit to me for
might
being 2 for 2 on my quarterback takes. I said Deshaun Watson was the very worst of all time, and I said Russell Wilson was not as bad as everybody said he was. So Russell Wilson, I mean, I think I gave the opinion yesterday that the Steelers have a 0% chance to win the Super Bowl. I mean, it's a little higher now. I mean, it's not they didn't beat a good team, but the offense certainly looks better, in my opinion, with Russell Wilson. They're able to air the ball out a little bit more. So, good for them, I guess. Whatever. World Series, the Yankees, they lose 4-2. Now trail 3-0 in the series. It's great for baseball. Alex Verdugo hit a home run for the Yankees. Freddie Freeman hit his 3rd home run this series. Walker Buehler, future Red, went 5 innings, striking out 5. Series stinks. I mean, the series stinks. The Yankees get what they deserve. And the Dodgers, congratulations. They paid for the best roster in baseball, and they're going to win a World Series because of it. All's right that ends right. NBA news. The Jazz's Taylor Hendricks, I don't know if you saw this clip. He suffered one of the more gruesome leg injuries I think I've ever seen in my life. And their loss last night to the Mavericks, he is done for the season. I think it was broke a fibula and a bunch of other stuff. So tough scenes there for Taylor Hendricks. Paolo Banchero, he dropped 50 points in the Magic's win over the Pacers. That's the best night of his career. And Casey, FC Cincinnati, the orange and blue, they got it done. 1-0 win, a dominating 1-0 win over New York City FC, the second New York City team. Is that right? Are there only 2?
Red Bulls.
Okay, there's 2. Assad scored the lone goal for the orange and blue. My dad was there.
Was he really?
He said
awesome.
He said he liked it.
Yeah, it was a good match. FC finally came out since probably the Miami game and dominated. This back half of the season's been really rough. FC completely turned it around, though, here in the playoffs first round. So awesome to see. Acosta wasn't able to get a goal, but he was definitely very, very important to the game yesterday. He was really getting those touch passes in there for other guys to capitalize on. Areño, he looked really good. Kubo, he's just fantastic. Those 3 are going to be very important coming up for this playoff run. They need to be on top of it. They need to be in sync with each other to be able to have any sort of offensive pressure, any sort of offensive presence. And I think the one important thing, too, is that FC scored first. When they score first, they're like 15-1.
Really?
That's the fun thing about soccer is when you score first, the other team doesn't even score sometimes.
It's true. That's true. That's because FC is just really good when they have a good game script. So that being said, I expect them to continue this momentum that they got and get the win on Wednesday. They play Wednesday.
They play
Wednesday.
I don't think so.
They do. They do play Wednesday.
Casey seems convinced that they play Wednesday, Elliot.
I mean, I wrote it down. It's Saturday. They play Saturday. November.
I'm not sure that's right.
Oh my, we have an FC Cincinnati schedule off.
How is that not right? It says I looked up FC Cincinnati schedule. It says they play New York City FC on Saturday at 5 p.m.
Seems like they play on Saturday, Casey.
I guess you're right. I thought the tournament was Monday, Wednesday,
This is why the
Friday.
sport don't.
Who did FC Cincinnati beat?
New York City FC.
That's right. Who lost to the Steelers on Monday Night Football?
The Giants.
And who lost to the Dodgers?
The Yankees.
That's right. The Knicks also lost. So New York City became the first metro area
Oh!
to lose a game in the MLB, the MLS, the NBA, and the NFL on the same day. So all my New York friends that said, oh, this is the worst sports day ever, statistically, they were correct.
Wow.
It was.
Wow. Tough to see. How about this one? I saw Mouse complaining about it, so I'll say it. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they get a big win, 110-104. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell combined for 59 points. It's pretty good.
Donovan Mitchell, you know how good you have to be to make the number 45 look cool? That's just a nonsense number, and he's made it really cool in the NBA.
That's true. Jacob said I should talk about the Pacers because of proximity.
That's our team.
That's right. They lost to the Magic 119-115.
You did talk about the Pacers. Paolo's 50-point game.
Correct, but I didn't say what the score was.
Okay.
So if you cared about the score, it was 119-115. But good for them. Good for the Pacers. Good
Basketball
loss.
happened.
NBA regular season.
It starts like December 27th
It's
for
tough.
me.
It's
The
tough.
only thing with the NBA right now, so Kenny Atkinson takes over, head coach of the Cavs. JJ Redick with the Lakers. I was telling you before, it's a sport that I feel like coaching just doesn't matter. It's not that it doesn't matter. I think it matters. I just think that the athletes don't accept the coaching, and it's really hurt the sport. But two teams that I've noticed coaching making a huge difference just right off the bat, only 3 to 4 games in. I know the Lakers lost last night, but J.J. Redick's killing it with the Lakers so far. It has nothing to do with the record. I mean, the record helps. It's just the way that they play the game now. I mean, they're actually running sets. Like, it's not just pass the ball around the perimeter and just, jack a contested shot. And the Cavaliers, they've had the talent. They've won games in the past, but they just look more locked in, and they just look more confident, and the product just looks better. We're seeing already 2 really good coaching jobs already. Like I said, I don't really buy into coaching too much in the NBA, more so because the athletes don't accept it. But when they do, you can tell right off the bat which teams, when they accept coaching, it makes an impact right away, and we're seeing it already. So, but there you go.
If the Cavs win one this year,
Win a
championship. If they win the championship, do you think Donovan Mitchell will be more beloved than LeBron in the city of Cleveland?
I said, look, LeBron was a great, but the fact that Donovan Mitchell chose to stay in Cleveland, I think, is one of the biggest Cleveland sports wins.
That is definitely true. I just don't think anyone's ever going to pass LeBron because LeBron's from there.
Yeah, I don't think they're.
Yeah, my question was sarcastic, but but yeah, I get listen. If I was a superstar, I certainly wouldn't want to probably stay in Cleveland. Go for Donovan Mitchell that he did.
But I've said too, if Mitchell wins a championship with the Cavs, I know this sounds weird. It would feel more like a real Cleveland championship because everything that they did with LeBron just was like, it's a LeBron championship.
That's fair.
They went to the finals. LeBron went to the finals. They win the championship. LeBron won the championship. LeBron. So right now, if they find a way to win a championship with Donovan Mitchell, I think it would feel like an organic Cleveland Cavaliers championship because I still don't think they get credit. Even when they do the show, like when they're highlighting team history, they're like, the Cavs, they won the title back in 2016, when LeBron James was, it has to make sure they remind LeBron James won you that championship. You don't do that with a lot of other franchises. I think it would be more of a credibility thing more than anything. But
that's probably fair. I think it's probably just because Cleveland, was really nothing until he got there in 2003, and then he left, and that was still all you talked about Cleveland for was the burning the jerseys, and whenever the Heat came back, that was the main story that followed the Cavs. So for him to come back, he's just really, when you think of Cleveland, you think of LeBron.
Yep.
So I think those two are just basically synonymous at this point.
Yeah, before that, it was the ELO. It wasn't even a good memory for NBA for the Cavs, but nonetheless, continue. My bad.
Well, I just had one more NFL nugget. Mike McCarthy said the Cowboys have to be better after Diggs in the I don't know if you saw that quote. The reporter said, "Will you be better?" And then he's like, "These nuts."
That's right.
And then that was pretty much the end. He walked away.
Yeah, classic.
So Mike McCarthy's very upset.
With the reporter or with?
With
Diggs.
With Diggs, because he said these nuts.
Yeah, it was a little spat. It was a little spat. What did he say again?
These nuts.
I just wanted to get a third one of those.
They asked.
I was just making sure.
What was the question?
The response is all that matters. Like
right,
Elliot's like, I don't care about the question.
I think the question was about a blown coverage, and his response was "D's nuts."
It's very funny.
As it should be. That's always the most valid way to respond to any kind of criticism. D's nuts.
I mean, it's just a very funny response.
It is. I don't know why Mike McCarthy's all upset. I mean, I think that's a very entertaining way to handle media. Anytime you don't like what the media said, D's nuts.
It seems fair. I'm going to start doing that when you ask questions I don't want to answer.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
And by the way, as we head to break here, Mark Vetters he's been a member for 13 months.
Wow.
D's nuts.
13 months. His message after being a 13th month paying member: fire Zach Taylor.
Very kind.
Which means if Zach Taylor's fired, that means there's an opening as head coach.
And Mark Vetters.
And I know exactly who's going to fill that head coaching void. You
Me.
Three. You three. Right in front
I'm going to
of me.
be head coach.
You're going to be
I
head
think
coach.
Elliott as the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals would be probably the best content of all time.
I think it would be.
I mean, we saw what happened when you led a Madden franchise.
I wouldn't win a game.
Didn't go well.
No, I wouldn't win a game.
Well, the members now.
Right.
Coach Rearing, you guys, big loss over the weekend. Blown coverage. I mean, what do you have to say about that?
These nuts.
There we go. More off the bench when we come back. Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister in the producer chair. Elliot Rearing and Jacob Tissett with you here. Off the bench here on a Tuesday. Again, every week, it's always an emotional Monday reacting to either what is a win that just kind of feels because some of the wins haven't been great, but you'll take wins. And then you come off these losses and you just feel gross on Monday. Not a good feeling yesterday, but you've had more now than 24 hours to digest it and to take it all in. There's no positives. You get beat 37-17.
No.
But are you as upset today as what you were yesterday in instant reaction?
I don't think I'm going to be upset about this Bengals team at all anymore this year. And I made that decision late last night.
Yeah.
And I think I'm done being upset about this team. They've hurt me enough. It's been long enough with pain in 2024. So I'm done being upset. It's just a bad football team, and I'm a fan of the bad football team. And lucky for me, I've been a fan of a bad football team for the vast majority of my life. So I know how to handle this. And I'm going to be okay.
You've been here before.
That's right. I saw someone compare the Bengals to the Mark Sanchez Jets and said 2 years make you think that you're not a poverty franchise, and then you go back to being a poverty franchise. And that just really hurt me deep inside.
I'm not angry over the loss. It's just one of those things where every loss that happens from this point forward it just numbs the feeling of it. Like when you get blown out, you're not really angry. It's just like you're sad. I was out of that Bengals game at the end of the third quarter. The game was over at the end of the third quarter. So I've been mentally out of it for a long time now. As time goes on, as this season ends and the Bengals don't make the playoffs, these losses start to hurt less. It's just like the Reds effect. Once you get to September, the Reds season's over. So just watch it, I guess, if you want, or you watch the other good games. There's a lot of other good games going on.
Loss is a loss. You lose a close one. Does it make you feel different today?
Losing close makes me feel significantly worse.
That's right. That's
losing the way they lost to the Ravens is one of the worst losses I've ever had.
If this would have been a shootout loss to the Eagles at home, I would still have relative faith in this team going forward, just because there's not offensive concerns anymore. Yeah. The defense we knew was a problem, but if the offense is scoring 30 every game, I at least can talk myself into having a shot. Now that we have questions on both sides of the ball, what am I supposed to talk myself into?
And that's what I feel like those losses against the Chiefs and the Commanders and the Ravens. There's no such thing as a good loss, but there was at least I would come in and be like, hey, I know you guys feel horrible about that loss, but there's still a lot to feel good about this team when you look at what their strengths are. But the problem with the Eagles' loss is you lost because you were bad on, not just both sides of the ball, but all three facets of the game when special teams, offense, and defense when it's all said and done. But trade deadline coming up a week from today. I think we can all accept that the Bengals are not going to be major players in that scene at all. And when I say trade, could they pull off a trade? It'll probably be for a name that's not going to get everyone all super jacked or excited. Could they make a light trade? Possibly. But I think we can all agree that they're not going to make any significant move that's going to make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside moving forward. So we're going to have a little exercise right here. You guys are now the head coaches, every single one of you. You're a head coach, you're a head coach, you're a head coach. I'm curious, if you are Zach Taylor, if you are the head coach of this Cincinnati Bengals team, and the ingredients to make a meal, it's right in front of you. You're not going to get any more ingredients. You're not going to get any change. It's exactly what's in front of you. How do you make this meal better? How do you make this team better? What are you going to do to maximize the talent that's on this roster? I think the reason that it's so frustrating is because you comb through the roster, even on defense, as bad as the defense is, you see names that are like, I know that's a good player. It just doesn't make sense. How do you have this many good players, even on that side of the ball, that struggled all season, even going into last year, and it just not work? What are we doing wrong? Offensively, even with T. Higgins out, why are the Cincinnati Bengals still not being as explosive offensively the last 3 weeks as what we've seen the first month and some change of the season? You're the head coach. What you have to work with is right in front of you. What adjustments, what are you going to do to make this team better in 2024 when the final 9 games of the season are upon us? I don't know who wants to start. I don't care who wants to start, but the first head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals in this room is who, and what are you doing?
I'll take it. Not a lot you can do on defense. Not a lot of pieces. So we're going to try to figure out how we're going to be able to score 50 a game.
Yep.
Because that's the only way the Bengals are going to be able to win. And the way you do that is you don't worry about if guys don't know the playbook or if they might run the wrong route every now and then. If they can run in a straight line and catch the ball for 45 yards twice a game, you're going to play them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to play Jermaine Burton over Andre Yoshivas because we're done watching 80 get 60 minutes of cardio out there on a Sunday. He doesn't know how to run routes. The only time he gets production is on a Joe Burrow scramble drill when he can find open space in the field, oftentimes in the red zone, where it's a short area that he has to work with. He's not a good receiver. It's a great story for the Princeton kid. He's not a wide receiver 3. We're going to give Jermaine Burton a chance. Jermaine Burton, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase, the only 3 receivers I'm giving more than 10 snaps a game.
Okay, I like that.
Mike Gesicki, let's count him as the 4th receiver.
All
Eric
right.
All's starting at tight end. Mike Gesicki will work in at tight end. He'll be the 3rd and 4th receiver. Burton will play most of the receiver snaps. And then at halfback, it's all Chase Brown with a little bit of Zach Moss. That's the only way you're going to help this team out. On defense, Von Bell looks slow. The only thing I can think to help that is Jordan Battle hasn't looked great, but I'd at least give him more run because we've seen what Von Bell can do, and it's not enough. So I'd put Jordan Battle out there on defense and then kind of just pray when that side of the ball is out there. Hope McPherson can figure it out because whether you like it or not, he's going to be your kicker for the long term. But I think on offense, you got to take the upside at this point, and that upside comes with Jermaine Burton over Andre Yoshivas or Charlie Jones or anyone else that they've been throwing out there at the wide receiver 3.
Okay, I like that. I think that's a recipe for success. If I were the head coach, I'm done playing conservative. I'm done going into each game, and we're just going to start settling for field goals. I'm done with it. We're going to start going for 4th. I know the Bengals go for 4th a lot. When you cross midfield and it's 4th and whatever, 4th and short, you're going for it. That's what you're doing. You're going for it. You have Joe Burrow, go for it. And we're going to keep
short?
4th and anything under 4th and 5. You're going for it.
Cool.
No matter where you are in the field, you're going for it. You're going to get Jamar Chase downfield. Run him downfield. And then you're going to throw it deep. You're going to throw it deep to somebody. I don't care who he's throwing deep to. More than 15 yards downfield, somebody's catching a football. Because I'm tired of watching Jamar Chase play right by the offensive line and just sit there, and we'll just dump little screens or little swings, little whatevers to our best wide receiver. Throw the ball downfield. I watched George Pickens and every other Steelers wide receiver last night torch that Giants defense. Torch them. And we're unable to do it. Zach Moss, I thank you for your service. You're no longer getting touches. Chase Brown, you get all the touches, and we'll go from there. If you want to do some screens, if you want to do some passes to Zach Moss, feel free to do that. Jacob kind of mentioned my other point, which is Jermaine Burton needs to play football. There's no reason. Yoshi hasn't been good enough to warrant having that wide receiver 3 spot. It just doesn't make sense to me. I've never really understood. I've never been a Yoshi guy. I think he's serviceable. I think he's fine, but he doesn't win you football games. You're never going to win a football game on the back of Andre Yoshivas. Mike Gesicki, I don't even know if it's Mike Gesicki as much as keep involving the tight ends as much as possible. I think Eric All has been pretty damn good this season, and if you're able to throw the ball to one of your tight ends consistently, you have an option there. You have a 3rd wide receiver in the aggregate. Make it happen. The offense has to score points. They have to score a ton of points to be in these games. The defense isn't good. We've seen it. Honest to God, there's nothing you can do to fix the defense unless you're going to make a trade, which we know they won't. Bengals need to focus on somehow getting the ball downfield as quick as possible, or do that drive they did against the Eagles. 10-minute, take every second of that quarter and go score a touchdown. Keep the defense off the field for as long as you can. That's the method for success. The Bengals' offense should be a lot better than it is. I blame play calling. So if I was head coach, that would be another thing. I'd give up play calling. I'd give it to somebody else who knows what they're doing. And then we'll go from there. Joe Burrow needs to be throwing 2 touchdowns a game, at least. He needs to be throwing 250 yards a game, at least. Like this is how the offense was supposed to be built. Not dink and dunk your way down the field. Throw the ball. That's what I would do.
Fair enough. And I'm glad that you brought up giving up play calling, because I think that's something realistically that the current head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, if they have another week where that offense looks the way it has for the last 3 straight games, I think some internal change has to take place just to kind of give some fresh air, just kind of breathe some life into this team a little bit because they're flat offensively. But Casey, I have not forgot about you. Don't worry. I see you scooted up. You're ready to go. Coach McAllister, how are you fixing this Cincinnati Bengals team?
Man, there's a lot of things that you could do to adjust this team. But for starters, it's playing your best players and only playing your best players. I'm tired of putting in guys that do absolutely nothing for this team. Sam Hubbard, gone. I don't care how much people love the kid from Ohio. He provides you nothing. Miles Murphy doesn't provide you anything at the moment, but at least he's got a little more run, that he has some time to progress and show you something. Cedric Johnson, I don't know where he's at. That's a rookie that we haven't seen much of yet. I'd give him some run. Von Bell, I'm kind of out on Von Bell as well. I would put in Jordan Battle, let him try to win that job back. I mean, he was the highest graded safety rookie last season, so there's got to be something there. Defensively, there's just not a whole lot you can do. But I think the best course of action is, if you already know you're going to give up 50 points a game, I think the best thing to do is to just take a page out of Brian Flores' book, copy exactly everything he does. He's the best defensive coordinator in the league, and you just blitz. You just blitz these teams till they can't stop you anymore. And if we don't have the guys to be able to do it, put in the young guys that are fast enough to do it, because it works. It's effective. It gets the ball back to the offense, which is how we're going to win ball games. So that being said, Burton, he's going to be playing a lot more snaps too. Just like Jacob said, there's no reason why Yoshi should be playing the entire football game for the most part as the third receiver. It's just not working. He's not good enough, not explosive enough. Burton has more explosive plays than I think most of the team. So yeah, I'm going to be playing Burton a lot more. Eric All is going to be my starting tight end. Gesicki is going to find a way to get out there as the third, fourth receiver on some plays. And I'm going to throw the ball probably 85% of the time. Clearly, the offensive line can't run block unless we scheme something, which I just don't know if we have the coaching staff to be able to scheme something like a great running attack. I know they can rely on Joe Burrow to get it done. And I think I'm just tired of watching Joe Burrow on third and fourth down having the opportunity taken out of his hands, where we call plays that are designed screens or designed to go to a specific target. I'm tired of that. I want to give him the options. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I'm going to roll him out of the pocket quite often because the offensive line's banged up and it's not very good at the moment. So I'm going to give him all the opportunity to be able to extend the play, make the right options, the right reads, and be the quarterback that we know he can be. And that's how I'm going to solve this Bengals team for the moment. If you want to know what I think they should truly do, they should probably find some like Ethereum crystals, maybe a shaman or something, and go back in time and just like fix the mistakes they made in the Super Bowl and just win that. So then we don't have to worry about this. Because obviously there's just like no other option, to be honest with you.
I feel like the reception margin in each game is very funny too. Bengals have the top two guys who get like 20 catches, and then the other guys that are on the team too, they get like 3, all of them combined. So
7 targets to non-Jamar Chase wide receivers against this week, and 2 catches, 45 yards. 1 catch, 41 yards from Jermaine Burton.
That's tough. Maybe more Trenton Irwin and Tanner Hudson.
Trenton Irwin and Tanner Hudson, that would actually, I take everything I said back. The first thing I would do, we don't even need them. We'll go 51 out of 53.
Okay.
See a T.I. and Hudson. I mean, those guys are useless.
Big catch.
And big fumble.
I don't know. First of all, everyone, all those suggestions, like, again, because they're not going to acquire a player at the deadline.
Right.
And to be fair, their biggest deficiency is defensively. And I don't think there's one move. You go get Max Crosby. Great, fantastic, super. You're getting to the quarterback a little bit more, but I don't think it doesn't hide all the other deficiencies with this team. Does that make you better? Yes. I don't think it's like, all right, all of our problems are solved, right? Like,
I kind of disagree. I think a dominant edge rusher would mask a lot of the deficiencies, but I do think that that's just not a feasible option for this team. Like, they're not going to go and spend the acquired draft capital to go get a Max Crosby, and they don't have the cap space to afford him either. So it's futile just talking about it because Max Crosby is just too good. There's other options out there, but I don't think that those are dominant pass rushers like Max Crosby is. So it's just like there's only a few guys that really change the look of your defense, mask those deficiencies, and they're just too hard to get.
The level of one player that would fix this Bengals defense is a level of player that A, probably isn't even on the trade market if we're being real.
Yeah.
TJ Watt.
And B, right.
Yeah.
Or B, is an amount of picks that the Bengals would never give up. And most teams probably wouldn't give up. Not even a Bengals conservative thing. Like, you're talking about 2, 3 ones for a lot of these guys. I mean, we're talking about the Max Crosbys, the Myles Garretts, the Jeffrey Simmons of the world, the real dominant D linemen. Those guys just don't get moved very often, and when they do, it's for a king's ransom.
And a king's ransom that I don't think the front office has really had time to thoroughly sit down and weigh those options at the midway point of the season.
And with the amount of holes this defense has, is it a great idea to give up a ton of draft capital for one guy? I don't know.
Yeah. And that's like what the point I was like getting to with that was I don't think there's one move you can make that totally erases all your defensive deficiencies. So that's not coming. And offensively, sure, you can go get Mike Williams. You can go get a third receiver if you want. But I think that they have that guy. I'm here to tell you right now, I don't care if Jermaine Burton's the biggest jerk in the world, if he doesn't say hi to coach when he walks in the locker room. I don't care if he steals other people's parking spots. I don't care if he's reaching in pockets while people are out in the field and he's stealing money. I'm joking, of course. I don't know really what has led to him not being out on the field, but you've seen when he is out there, you see glimpses of it right off the bat. I don't know what the issue is that's leading to him not getting the time that everyone feels like he needs. But get him out there. I don't care. At this point, you desperately need someone out there to go spark this offense. I think that's the guy there.
If he's just a one-trick pony, like if he can only run go routes, it's been very effective so far. Like he's seen targets and receptions, and I think it's starting to broaden a little bit more. If you look at the film, like he's running other routes, and he was targeted in the red zone. Like there's more opportunities for him. I'm hoping that that's a sign that we're going to see more of him. But, man, like he stretches the field. He makes it so more guys are open. And same with Gesicki. Like, I don't understand. Like, I get the same. Like, he was filling in T. Higgins' role, and he's probably the same body type, runs the same routes, and you can't really do that if T. Higgins is there. But, man, we got to get him involved also. I don't know how they do that, but it just seems like we're wasting away a lot of the talent that's there just because they don't know the full playbook. Like that's, I don't know. You got to be better than that. You got to find ways to get those guys involved.
Let's shorten down the play calls. Let's go. All right, Joe Burrow's in the huddle. All right, Spire 2, Y banana. Jermaine Burton, you're running a streak.
Yep.
Call the play. All right, Jermaine Burton, you're running a slant. Just add that at the end and just let him know where to line up and what to run, because he clearly doesn't know where to line up and what to run or when he's on the field. But when he is lined up and running the right route, he's making great plays. And we don't have anyone else that's making any kind of plays, so you have to find a way to use him. It's just the position you're in right now.
Fair enough. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We'll pick up with this, and we'll also dive into some more NFL stuff coming up around the corner. It is wild. Do we consider this the halfway point? Making the season an odd amount of number. I'm like OCD, and it does piss me off that there's 17 games in a season. It really irritates me.
I think it's got to be week 9 because it's an 18-week regular season.
So is that what? So it's not the halfway point?
No,
That's what's driving me nuts.
I think next week's would be the halfway point.
Damn. Well, we're almost to the halfway point of the season.
That's right.
But more Off the Bench when we come back. Bengals 3-5 on the season, of course, coming off that 37-17 loss against the Eagles over the weekend. And look, we know changes are not going to be coming at the trade deadline coming up a week from today. So everyone had to put their head coaching cap on. And if you were head coach for a day, what changes would you make with the product at hand, with the resources you have, with the players that are already on this roster? What changes would you make to help push this team to that next level? That's what everyone just kind of went around and shared. The one thing, in all seriousness, that I think Zach Taylor, we're inching closer and closer towards, because you're running out of options at this point. He won't be fired midseason. Many believe he won't be fired anytime soon, regardless, just because he took you to a Super Bowl, back-to-back AFC titles. Like he's not just going to be out on the first really bad season that they've had with them there. And then others believe, no, you got to act with urgency. You can't waste another season of Joe Burrow. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. Probably won't make it to the end of his contract, but most likely will be the head coach heading into next season. But the one thing he can do, I'm not comparing college to the pro, but like Ryan Day was in a very similar situation at Ohio State where just things were not going right. And the university is like, we're not ready to fire him. He hasn't lost. He's not at the point where we can move on from him, but something needs to change. Something like they need to make some kind of adjustment. And that adjustment was, okay, we're going to bring in Chip Kelly and he's going to call the plays. Dan Pitcher's the offensive coordinator. I think the one most obvious thing that can be done right now, if you're Zach Taylor, just to salvage whatever is left of this season, and there's a lot left. They're a playoff contender, no doubt. What do you guys feel about if Zach Taylor, if it was broke today that Zach Taylor is giving up play calling duties and Dan Pitcher is now obviously already the OC, but now the play caller? What does that do for this team, in your opinion, if that change is ever made?
The first thing I always think when a head coach that calls plays gives up play calling is that they're on the route to getting fired. So I think that Zach Taylor giving up play calling would require some sort of pressure from the front office, which I don't think is going to come. I think that would be a great decision. I would love to see Dan Pitcher call plays. I think that's part of the animosity towards Zach Taylor is a lot of the play calling mistakes, and maybe a lot of the negativity that's directed his way would not be if he wasn't the play caller. You'd have to direct it somewhere else. Obviously, the head coach still gets most of those, most of the problems of the team fall on the head coach, whether you're the play caller or not. All of them do. You're the head coach. But I think when you are the play caller as well, it just opens you up to a little bit more criticism. I think it would be smart for Zach Taylor to move on from play calling. I think it's something that he's not very good at. It's something that he's never done at a very high level. I would love to see Dan Pitcher give it a go. I think Dan Pitcher will get a chance to be a play caller at some point pretty soon. I think if Brian Callahan hadn't been hired by the Titans, Dan Pitcher would have left and been an offensive coordinator somewhere else. He was a highly sought-after guy who's been Burrow's quarterbacks coach since he got here. I would love to see him call plays. I just don't think Taylor will give it up because I don't think that pressure will come from anywhere else.
John in the chat said Taylor needs to go back to bars and give balls out every time they lose. Made me laugh. It comes down to expectations. This is a win-now league. The pressure to win when you have a top-tier quarterback is, I'd argue, the highest in any sport. The Bengals had a lot of pressure coming in. They had a lot of expectations coming in. You think they would, or you think they made the right moves in the offseason. They addressed the defense right. The offense looks a little bit better. They get Mike Gesicki, a better tight end than Irv Smith. And you're like, okay, the offensive line's a little bit improved. The Bengals look good coming into this season. And now we're what are we, halfway through almost? And the Bengals just aren't that team. They're not the team you thought. They're not the team that went to a Super Bowl. They're not the team that went to back-to-back AFC championship games. This is a different Bengals team. And I think a lot of people haven't come to terms with that yet. It's not that team. We're not watching the Super Bowl Bengals. They shouldn't have Super Bowl expectations. It's not that roster. It's not that good, which is crazy because of how bad that offensive line was. But saying that, it's just you have to temper your expectations. If Mike Brown's going to sit there and expect Super Bowls, then I think Zach Taylor shouldn't be there any longer because it's evident to me at this point that he's not going to be able to get it done. We'll see what happens at the end of this season because the schedule is so easy that it's laughable. Not finding 9 wins this season would be a disgrace. And that's when I would maybe look for a change. Because at some point, you have to try to win football games with Joe Burrow. At some point. You have to win early on in the season. And he just doesn't know how to do it. So if he doesn't know how to do it, then get rid of him. I defended David Bell because I didn't think what he did mattered. I think what Zach Taylor does matters. I think Zach Taylor is his own man, and I think he's down there calling plays, and I think they're the wrong plays. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong in that. Maybe the impact of Zach Taylor, I'm over-exaggerating it in my mind, but I don't think I am. The Reds needed a change. What David Bell was doing, whether or not you thought he should be fired, he wasn't winning. He wasn't winning. And when you don't win, you lose your job. That's the only job of the head coach. It's to win or lose. And you have to win to keep your job. Zach Taylor, the past 2 seasons, I know he lost his quarterback last year. I'm aware of what happened. But this year, there's no excuses. Like, you're out of them. You're out of excuses. The defense cannot look this bad. The offense has no reason to not put up 25 a game. So, yeah, if I'm Mike Brown and I'm the front office, I look to make a change. Now, will they? Probably not. Because that's just how they run. Just like they don't make trades during the deadline. It's just how they are. Whether or not that's right, which it's not. But that's the reality of the situation.
The one thing that we haven't really touched on a whole lot, and you kind of sparked this idea in my mind about Zach Taylor and what he did last year, that offense completely changed when Joe Burrow did go down.
100%.
Jake Browning. And we thought we were going to see a lot more of that kind of like sneak into this offense because of how effective it was with a backup quarterback, how efficient Jake Browning was for those 8-9 weeks. And we haven't seen like any of that. Like it's still the same offense, which is just insane to me. It's like blowing me away that we have not somehow looked back at the past and said, maybe we should go back to some of this stuff. Maybe we should maybe throw some screens here and there to Chase Brown in the flats there. I don't know. I don't know exactly the fine details of what they did, but you can tell that it's not the same offense. And it's weird that we're here now at the same place and we say it's the same look offense. It's still reliant on Joe Burrow being this perfect quarterback, which he damn near is every game, and we're still not good enough. It's weird. It's weird to me. The other thing, too, about the defense, which Zach Taylor is in charge of that. He's the head coach. Oversees it, at least, along with the defensive coordinator, Lou. I just don't see how you look at this team and go like, all right, we need to just be ultra aggressive because we're not going to be able to do what we've done for the last 4 years. And that's the bend, don't break mold. Like, I just don't get it. Like, they're so unaware. They're so unconscious of what this team is and what it could be and what they did last year. It's like dumbfounding. It's like, how can we not rekindle some of the stuff that we learned about ourselves last year and apply it to this year? It's weird. I don't understand it.
Joe Burrow ranks 16th in passes of 20 yards or more. 16th. That's how many completions he has of 20 yards or more.
Does it show like
he has 20 on the season?
Like the attempted ones, like do they show that by any chance?
I don't know the attempted ones. I don't have in front of me. But as of right now, he has 20 completions of 20 yards. That ranks 16th.
That's too damn low.
For reference, Bo Nix has more. Sam Darnold has more. Jordan Love, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, C.J. Stroud, Jaden Daniels, Kirk Cousins, Baker, Lamar, Aaron, Josh Allen, Trevor, Brock Purdy all have more than Joe Burrow.
I see. If you would have had me guess, I would have said it still would have been higher than 16th. If you would have had me guess before you said that, I would have said probably not as high as it should be, but still pretty high. I think. Am I wrong? Is that too low when you have T. Higgins and Jamar? I know T didn't play this past Sunday. Is that number too low in your opinion?
He was like in the top 3 in that Super Bowl run, and passes that were.
And that was without time to throw.
Yeah, that was without time to throw. It's just weird. Like the whole offense is completely shifted from. It's the same, but it's the same from the last couple seasons, not the 2021 season.
Yeah,
it's just weird.
For reference, Joe Burrow has 20 completions of 20 yards or more. Russell Wilson in his 2 games has 9.
It's insane.
Throw the ball downfield. I don't get it. I don't understand it. How is every other team able to figure it out? I'm not saying you have to be so risky where you're the Jameis Winston, 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. But my God, you can't be afraid to throw. And that's what it feels like we are. It feels like the Bengals this season have been afraid. It's been safe.
Well, it's that 4th down call. It's a screen. Like that's what we called was a screen on 4th and 1, 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Like that's yeah, I think you're right. It's been that we're afraid to be aggressive, that we just want to be conservative. We want to kick field goals to end football games and not give Joe Burrow the chance to be aggressive and win the game himself. That's really what it boils down to. Do we want to take the ball out of his hands and be just ultra conservative and win games that way? Or are we going to be aggressive and let Joe Burrow go out there and win the game himself? And we just haven't been able to do that this year. Or refuse to do it this year. Or don't have the awareness to do it this year. Which is crazy because it's been an issue with this team for years, it feels like.
And by the way, so I was wrong on that. It was passing attempts. So he has 20 passing attempts, 20 yards or further.
Yeah, that's even worse then.
That's correct.
That's bad.
That's bad. And here's where I've defended Zach in the past, because people in the past had brought that up too, that they need to be more aggressive down the field. And I said, well, hold on. When your offensive line isn't giving you time to throw, when your offensive line has been as bad as Cincinnati's has been over the years, you kind of have to have quicker route trees. Like you need to have, calling plays that are putting Joe Burrow in a spot where he can get rid of the ball quicker. So I've always been not a fan of that, but I've always understood that. I remember last year, too, when he had the calf injury initially, Jamar Chase was not involved hardly at all in the first couple of games of the season, and I know he was starting to get a little frustrated, and he had said, I remember there was one in the postgame where he had come out and said, hey, they need to find a way to get me the ball more. And everyone was like, oh, man, are we starting to see some frustration kind of bleed out to the media? And I defended Zach in that particular run because I said, well, hold on, Joe Burrow could barely walk. So any play that they design or that they call is going to be so he can drop back quickly and quickly get rid of the ball. You're not going to be able to take full advantage of Jamar Chase's downfield threat when you're limited and can't, for one, he needs to get rid of the ball quicker. But right now, this is the best offensive line he's had during his entire time in Cincinnati. To me, it feels like with that, more time to throw, and having Jamar and T out there, you think you would see more of those attempts. So it went from, we thought, 20 big plays downfield to now just 20 attempts total at the almost the halfway point of the season. That's an alarmingly low number, in my opinion.
Do you know how many times he's been hurried this season? So when somebody, puts pressure.
Yep.
He ranks 33rd in the NFL in being hurried. 7 times. 7 times this season he's been hurried by the opposing defense. And for reference, C.J. Stroud's been hurried 38 times this season. Joe Burrow's 7. And they're still not throwing the ball downfield.
Now, do you think that number's so low because they aren't throwing the ball downfield?
Maybe. It's certainly
because that's why.
Because that's certainly
getting
it.
the ball out
little
so
chicken
fast.
or the egg.
Yeah. Well, they're getting the ball out so fast they don't have time to pressure him. So.
And but
the offensive line has been very, very good on all metrics, pass blocking wise. So you're absolutely right. Taking more shots on the field, I don't know why they're not doing it.
Doesn't make sense to me.
All right, this is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. We'll step away for a few moments. When we come back, we'll throw out a couple little more likely scenarios. And let me pull up. I don't even have what the more likely scenarios are. Good.
They were good ones,
here.
too.
Right here. So be thinking of these. Here's a couple more likelies, all right? From a college football perspective, who's more likely to make the playoffs, Indiana or Notre Dame? Who's more likely to miss the playoffs, Ohio State or Alabama? Who's most likely to finish last in the AFC North, the Cleveland Browns or the Cincinnati Bengals? And who's more likely to spend more this upcoming offseason, the Cincinnati Reds or the Cleveland Guardians? So be thinking about all of that, and we'll dive into all of this and more coming up. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, and we are back. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Jacob, the more and more we went on with the Bengals, you just started to sound more and more depressed, my friend.
It's beating him down.
I said at the beginning of the show I wasn't going to get upset about the Bengals anymore, and I'm getting upset about the Bengals again.
I can see it in his heart and in his eyes that he's starting to lose it a little bit. And this is a sad place to be as a Bengals fan. They weren't supposed to be this bad.
This is all I wait for all year.
All year long. I've been waiting all day for Sunday night.
Waited extra this year because it was since week 11 last year when Burrow got hurt. None of those games at the end of last year mattered. It was like a 14-month wait, and man, they still stink. So it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while to get over this.
It is. But we're not done with the Bengals.
No, at least my college football teams don't stink. Oh, wait, they do.
So that's why I want to give you a little bit of a break. We're going to have a couple college football more likely scenarios.
We'll see.
Throw out a couple scenarios. Curious your guys' thoughts on these. Again, a couple more likely scenarios. Let's start with college football. I know we talked about Indiana yesterday. I know Tom talked about it on Dialed In. Obviously, his son Luke covering the Hoosiers while he's in school right now, actually. But Indiana, usually football, no one really gives a damn about Indiana football. Basketball's about to tip off. And to be honest, the basketball program has underachieved for quite some time as well. But they're the most interesting thing about that, athletics department over there. But football has been not just one of the more entertaining aspects of that university or the Big Ten, but it's been all of college football this season. It's more likely. I don't know if you guys pay attention to Notre Dame, by the way, because I kind of put them in the rearview mirror once they lost to Northern Illinois or whoever it was at the beginning of the season. They've just been kind of quietly dominating teams ever since. And they're coming off a big top 25 win, putting up big numbers this past weekend. Who's more likely to make the playoffs? Indiana, who's currently undefeated, or one-loss Notre Dame, who seems to be cruising at the right time?
The super fun thing that Notre Dame and Notre Dame fans are figuring out right now is if you lose to a nobody team early enough in the season, nobody cares. Notre Dame lost at home to Northern Illinois. They're ranked 8th right now I mean, quite literally, nobody cares. Enough stuff has happened since then that people just forget. So I think both these teams have a decent shot, but just because Notre Dame did lose to a team like Northern Illinois, I'm going to say that they're less likely to make the playoff because I think they're one loss away from missing it. They still have to play at USC. They have to play Florida State, who I know hasn't looked good this year, but a preseason top 10 team. Who knows how that might go. And they have to play Army. So 3 tough games on their schedule left. Indiana's only tough game really is Ohio State. They should be able to take care of Michigan State, Michigan, and Purdue. 11-1 Indiana's absolutely in. I think that's more likely than an 11-1 Notre Dame. So I'm going to say Indiana's more likely to make the playoff.
Yeah, being in a conference also helps. And
Absolutely.
Indiana has that ability or has that benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to say Indiana's more likely, but I will say this. Notre Dame looks like they're going to go.
Yeah.
So
if I had to guess right now, I'd say both go.
I would say both go as well. So I'm going to say it's more likely that Indiana goes just because of the conference thing. When do they have to, at some point, get into a conference?
My
right?
current guess is when the playoff expands again to 16. It's already been talked about that Big Ten and SEC want 4 automatic bids each.
Okay.
I think once those automatic bids start going to the conferences, Notre Dame's going to be forced to. Because if you have a 16-team playoff and you only have 3-4 shots at getting in if you're not in a conference, it doesn't make sense. So I think we're looking at the next playoff expansion when Notre Dame's going to be strong-armed into joining a conference.
That's fair.
Yeah, and the thing that's wild is we're talking about Indiana and Notre Dame. I think these are 2 teams in the playoff hunt that obviously I don't think either will win well, we know Notre Dame won't win a conference championship.
That's right.
Indiana, to get to the Big Ten title game, would have to beat Ohio State. And now that seemed laughable a month ago. I'm still chuckling right now.
Not necessarily.
I won't be chuckling as much probably in a couple weeks. I'm starting
If
to
Ohio
buy
State loses to Penn State, they'd
you're
have 2
right.
conference
See, that's
losses.
that Buckeye ego thing where, like, there's no way you can get –
I know.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
there's a chance that you have 1-loss Indiana playing undefeated Oregon in the conference championship
Just
game.
like we drew up. Just like our preseason
just like everyone
predictions.
expected.
Go Hoosiers, man. But, yeah, more likely to make the playoffs, Notre Dame or Indiana. Look, Indiana, I have them winning this week. I think they're going to beat Michigan, and then that's going to set up a scenario where, yes, if you're Indiana, you're playing to beat Ohio State. But what you're playing for, if you're Indiana, when you do play Ohio State, assuming you're still undefeated, you're playing not to get blown out.
Measuring stick game.
Yeah, and I know, and you won't hear Cincinnati say that. You won't hear anyone on that team say that. But the bottom line is one thing that was even constant, even during the 14 playoff era, you can lose, you just can't get blown out. You can lose. Indiana can lose to Ohio State. A win for them is a 1-possession loss against the Buckeyes. That's a win. Ohio State fans won't feel good about it. Indiana, they lose to Ohio State by a possession, or let's just say 10, a touchdown and a field goal. That's going to get respect around college football because that'll prove, okay, they're right there. They're right there with those, super talented rosters. They're right there when it's all said and done. The one thing I got to wait on, too, we're basing a lot of this off of where these teams kind of fall in the not standings, but rankings. The College Football Playoff Committee has always tried to differentiate itself from the AP Top 25, and they always sometimes make a drastic push for teams to say, hey, we're not just going to take the AP Top 25 or Top 16 or Top 12 and just plaster it in that same order. We want to differentiate ourselves from the AP, and I think we're going to learn next Tuesday when the rankings come out a week from today. I don't care about where the AP has Notre Dame and Indiana. I don't care about the coaches poll. I hear so many coaches, they just tell one of their assistants to fill it out. They don't even care about that damn thing. I care about what the committee, how they value them. We could be propping up Indiana right now and think it's great, but the committee can come out and just say, well, you've beat literally nobody. Because they have literally beat absolutely nobody if we want to play by that game. I think we're letting the storyline aspect cloud our judgment, because if Alabama had this same schedule undefeated, we'd mock it. If Ohio State had this same schedule, we would mock it. So that's a very real possibility that the committee can just say, of 12 teams, we got to get the 12 best teams, and your record's great. But we have teams with losses that have losses because they've played somebody. While you're touting an undefeated record, well, I would hope you can go undefeated against some of those teams. Now, I don't know. Like I said, we'll learn a ton about how the committee values them a week from today, and I think that's something to keep an eye on. And same thing with Notre Dame. Because that loss, you can lose. You can't have bad losses or blowout losses. In Northern Illinois, you want top 12 teams in the country. And we're going to put a 1-loss Notre Dame team in when that 1 loss is against Northern Illinois over another 1-loss team that maybe lost by, a close game against a much better opponent.
I mean, everyone talks about Alabama, Vanderbilt, Tennessee losing to Arkansas as the worst losses for playoff contenders, and you never even hear Northern Illinois brought up.
No
one talks about that loss for Notre Dame. It's honestly crazy to me. And for a team that's not going to have a chance to play in a conference championship, a team that doesn't play a incredibly difficult schedule. I mean, the two of their 4 ranked opponents are the service academies, which kudos to them for being ranked. But I mean, we saw what they did to Navy this weekend. I don't expect Army to really put up a huge fight against them. That's a great story for those 2 schools. But I mean, when the triple option meets a real talented team, it doesn't usually go very well. So Notre Dame hasn't done a whole lot. That win over A&M looks like one of the best wins in the entire country at this point, which is obviously great. But to turn around and lose to Northern Illinois at home, I just feel like that loss has to mean more. And every time these rankings drop, it just doesn't.
But that's because the rankings mean nothing. Northern Illinois was ranked immediately following that win. They were ranked. They were a top 25 team in the country after you beat Notre Dame.
Yeah, because you beat Notre Dame, you have to be good. Or you're Northern Illinois, and Notre Dame's just not good. It could be that. But you're right. Like, it's that instant love affair right away with the storyline versus, are these teams good, or is this a good storyline? And more times than not, the storyline wins.
Yeah. Jolly brings up in the chat, Navy had 6 turnovers. Notre Dame is not that good.
Always a question, though, with that, and people always make that point with big turnover games. Did Navy have 6 turnovers, or did Notre Dame force 6 turnovers?
Yeah.
So there's always a little give and take there.
Little.
Absolutely. All right, moving on. We'll stay with college football more likely. I think when the 12-team playoff was announced, I think Ohio State, Alabama, they're locks for the next 10 years or however long the 12-team playoff will exist. But there are scenarios that have already popped up and presented themselves that, man, Alabama and Ohio State are actually very vulnerable to potentially missing the playoff. I think both teams, the margin for error is so slim that I don't think they could afford another loss. I don't think either team could afford another loss at this point. A loss for either team, and I think that they're done. I don't think Ohio State, the only good team that they've played thus far, they lost to. Yes, a close one, no doubt. But you have Penn State. You're going to have opportunities. But that Vegas line is very, very tight in this matchup. I don't believe in Penn State. I think Ohio State still takes care of business. But, man, if they stub their toe and they lose a close game to Penn State after losing a close game to Oregon a few weeks ago, I think there's a good chance Ohio State could be on the outside looking in when it's all said and done, no matter how talented this roster is. So, with that being in Alabama, you talked about the loss to Vanderbilt. That loss does not look as bad anymore. I know Vandy losing to Texas. People want to say, see, Vandy's not that good. Vandy, it literally took Texas, one of the top teams in the country, all 4 full quarters to beat that team. Vandy's not a terrible football team. It's a bad program. It's not a bad football team in 2024 as we currently sit here right now. So with that being said, what's more likely, Ohio State to miss the playoff or Alabama to miss the playoff?
I think it's Alabama to miss the playoff because I don't think Alabama's going to make the playoff. And I think Ohio State will. I don't see any world where Jalen Milroe and the Tide go into Baton Rouge and beat this LSU team. They've struggled on the road basically every step of the way this year. LSU is about as rowdy as it gets. It's a 7:30 game. Baton Rouge is going to be jumping. Nussmeier's playing really good football right now. And I fully expect LSU to win that game, which would knock Alabama out of it. I don't know what the spread is on that one yet. I would assume LSU is going to be favored, and that just yet again goes to they don't lose at home. And for Jalen Milroe to go in there and get a win against LSU, it would take a level of play that we haven't seen from him really since the first half of Georgia. This year, he's really fallen off in the last few games. The regression is alarming. I really, really think that Alabama's going to miss the playoff. And I think Ohio State's going to make it. I think Ohio State's going to cruise as an 11-1 conference champion. So I'm going to say LSU beats Bama, knocks them out of the playoff, so Bama's more likely to miss it.
Yeah, LSU is, by the way, favored -1.5.
Gotcha.
Ohio State is more likely to make it, which means Alabama's more likely to miss it. Alabama can't lose another game. Ohio State can lose another game. Two-loss Ohio State, it's a mortal lock. They're in.
And
I think you're right
because they're still going to make the Big Ten championship.
No, not with the second conference loss.
So if they lose to anybody,
if they lose anybody the rest of the year, they're not going to make the conference championship.
Okay, all right.
Unless Oregon somehow loses.
That's right.
Two games,
That's right. Because they got rid of the divisions, right?
Yeah, it's just the 2 top conference records.
So my concern about that, if they lose to Penn State, and I don't care, like let's say it's a close 24-21 final, Penn State, Ohio State loses another one on the road against a top 5 team. I don't see how they get in just because when you look at, are their 2 best wins considered to be the 2 close losses against top 5 teams?
Well, you'd have to beat an undefeated Indiana after that.
Yeah, and I wonder, and see, that's, again, I'm letting the brand judgment of Indiana, right? Yes,
I think a 10-2 Ohio State team losing at Oregon and at Penn State is absolutely in the playoff. I think with a home playoff game.
Man.
1,000,000%.
I would be concerned. And you would be too.
My thing is, so the teams ranked ahead of Ohio State, assuming they end 10-2, they have to play each other.
Yep.
Most of them.
They still have to cannibalize
Right.
one another.
Conference championships, they're going to match up with each other. And then are you putting a one-loss Miami that lost to Clemson in the conference championship over two-loss Ohio State? My biggest question going into these playoff rankings at the end of the season, how are they going to grade conference champion losers?
Yeah.
Because they're playing an extra game that the other teams are not. They're going to end up, some of them, probably with 2 losses when they had 1 through the regular season. How are you going to grade those teams versus teams that had that week off? Are you going to punish them for making their conference championship game? You're rewarding these teams for sitting at home?
There will be some scenarios where schools, and as dumb as this sounds, have to consider opting out of a conference championship game.
No.
Because if you lose...
You can't opt out of it because the bye means too much.
I'm just saying, like, those scenarios...
I think it is exponentially more valuable to miss the conference championship than to lose the conference championship. But I still don't know what I think of the bye. I think we're going to have to see how that plays out first.
I know everyone wants the conference championships to matter, and that's why they've presented it this way. But, man, you're right. Punishing, if you're a 2-loss team going to a championship game, punishing a team like that, because there's going to be a lot of 2-loss teams fighting for these 12 spots as well. And Alabama could be one of those. But you have LSU, as you talked about. The SEC just blew open with all these 1-loss teams, and Alabama is not going to get to the title game most likely. Again, 2 losses. There's just a lot that they have to overcome to do that. And by the way, I wasn't truly advocating to opt out of a conference championship game, but at times, sometimes these weird scenarios present themselves.
I think it could be beneficial.
I mean, what was the Major League Baseball? What did we see towards the end where both teams needed to split the doubleheader just so both got in?
Braves versus Mets.
Braves versus Mets. I mean, we see those. It's like, you know what? Why don't we just forfeit these games, or we both just agree to get out of here with the playoff?
I imagine the committee would be on the side of the loser of the conference championship, just because if you do it Kinner's way,
they haven't been before in the 4 team.
Yeah,
they kept Penn State out.
Yeah, it's true. But if you do it Kinner's way, right, and you tank, and you don't throw your starters in there, because then at that point you don't, like, what team are you? You don't know what team you're watching.
Yep.
Like Florida State, they didn't make it because the team they currently had wasn't good enough, right? It wasn't based on anything they did during the regular season. It was that their starting quarterback was like the 4th string guy, and that that team's not the team that we saw in the regular season. So if a team is playing the conference championship that's not the team that we saw in the regular season, how do you judge that team? And you probably don't judge them at all. You just based on what they did during the regular season.
Oh, well. It's about to be fun, though.
Yeah. It's exciting.
And there's a lot
The
of
home playoff
teams in
games
the
are
mix.
objectively the coolest thing of all time.
It's going to be fun. They're going to be really fun. I hope that one of my 2 teams gets one so I can go.
Yep.
That'd be pretty cool.
I just hate for me, from a fan perspective, you win your conference, you get the first round bye, you don't get to host a home game in a play. Like, more time. But then again, I was arrogant enough to think that would always be Ohio State, and here we are. We might actually get to see Ohio State host a home game, you know, when it's all said and done, and maybe Alabama. I don't know.
The potential playoff scenario that is a little bit weird, and I don't know if I've brought it up before or not, but if the number 1 seed is either Georgia or Texas or really anyone from the South, they're going to pick to play in the Cotton Bowl for their playoff game, which means the 2-3 game will be the Orange Bowl in the quarterfinal. If the 3 seed is Miami, which is looking likely, they'll play the 2 seed at home in the second round. The 2 seed will be forced to go on the road in the semifinal game.
Yeah, that's wild.
Crazy setup because those bowl games are locked in beforehand. Just another little quirk about the college football playoff that I think a lot of people might not have thought of going into the season.
Yeah, the first playoff, the first season for the 4-team playoff, there was a lot of those unknowns, and I feel like we're back in that same boat, which is kind of the fun part of it. But, you know, the Big 12 got a conference championship because of that stuff. Like, they had to go get the conference championship game.
Being the top-ranked non-conference champion is the best place to be in the playoff. The 5th-ranked team is the best place to be because you play the 12 seed in the first round, then you get to play the worst conference champion, which I'm not even sure is going to be a Power 5 team this year.
Really?
Are we sure it's not going to be Boise State?
Yeah, it could be.
If they win out and they're a top 10 team going into the playoff and they win Mountain West, are they not going to get a top 4? Big 12 probably is not going to have the highest-ranked conference champion. It could legitimately be Boise State, which means the 5th-ranked team would get to play the 12 seed and then Boise State.
That'd be
San
wild.
Diego State, Nevada, San Jose, Wyoming, Oregon State are who they have remaining.
Because it's not the Power 4 conference champions. It's the top-ranked 4 conference champions. So it could be Boise State. They're ranked 15th right now. They have an inside track.
All right, we'll continue on with a couple more likely scenarios. Obviously, with the Browns getting a win this past weekend, now 2-6. The Bengals loss drops them to 3-5. We thought the Bengals were about to take off and kind of pull away and get back into the conversation, for the playoffs. But right now, what's more likely, the Browns finishing in last in the AFC North or your Cincinnati Bengals? We'll discuss that. Plus, which team is more likely to spend the most money in the offseason coming up, the Cincinnati Reds or the Guardians? Not the most money in all of baseball, of course. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Just between the two, which team is more likely to spend more than the other? We'll get to all of that coming up. More Off the Bench next. All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. A week from today, the NFL trade deadline, of course, and the first reveal of the college football playoff rankings.
And nothing else.
That's all we care about. That's all we care about.
That's right.
Do you think the Bengals will make more memes with their Mike cart?
I hope. Maybe at the trade deadline.
Nothing says 3 and 5 like making a couple jokes about the Mike cart. So maybe we can get that back on Twitter, please. Let's focus on the Mike cart.
I don't know. I think a good laugh about players walking across the street to practice might, re-energize
I think that might
the
be
fan base.
That might
just
do
something.
Can't take pictures of them though.
No, you cannot. I forgot. We had Jay on a little after that. Forgot to ask him about that. I want to know what went down. Who scolded you? Who told you couldn't do that? But either way, we'll continue on here with a couple of these more likely scenarios as we sit here right now. NFL-wise, with the Browns getting the win over the Ravens this past week, 2-6. Look, I'm not going to lie. Last week, I thought that the Browns' playoff hopes are dead, and I don't want to overreact to a win over the Ravens, but mathematically, I mean, the Bengals are very much in the playoff hunt. They have one more win.
I saw it. Browns are at like 13%, 14% or something like that? It's still alive?
Like slightly shot up. You got the Chargers, and they play a lot of AFC teams coming up too, so that definitely helps. So you beat the Chargers, and I do believe that their seasons. And I say this every week. I always fall for this stuff, but the Chargers game for the Browns, like if they win that, I think that they're keeping that roster intact and moving forward to compete. I think if they lose that game, I think Zadarius Smith is gone and they move on from quite a few of those pieces. But it is. I didn't really consider the Browns back in that playoff conversation until you start looking at when the Colts lost, the Dolphins lost. Obviously, the Bengals going down helped open that door a little bit. The Jets are no longer, I think, even a threat at this point. So the door opened for Cleveland with that win over Baltimore on Sunday, and the Bengals dropped to 3-5. So you start to look at this. The Bengals still, though, have a lot of games that they are going to be favored to win and should win moving forward. And the Browns similarly have some games that when you get that type of quarterback play, will be in position to win as well. But at the end of the day, they're going to be battling each other for one of those final playoff spots, but also battling each other for the last place spot in the AFC North. Which is more likely, the Browns or the Bengals, to finish in last in the AFC North?
Woo! I mean, I'm going to say it's more likely that the Browns finish last just because I think both teams are pretty bad right now, and I would lean towards Joe Burrow getting you more wins than Jameis Winston, but I think it could come down to the head-to-head game. I mean, I don't think that's a stretch to say that we beat the Browns in Cleveland. The Browns will come here later in the season. It might come down to that matchup for who finishes last in the division. I don't think either of these teams are going to make the playoffs. I don't think either of these teams are very good. It's really, really sad that we're having this conversation because both fan bases thought that this was a chance of a year that their team could actually compete coming into the season. The Browns fans and Bengals fans alike thought they could compete this year, and nope. Big fat no for both of them.
It's close. I mean, it's close. I think it just comes down to schedule, and I think the Bengals have the easier schedule remaining. And it just honestly depends what you think of the Bengals as a good or bad team. Do you think the Bengals are good or do you think they're bad? Because the Browns will travel to Cincinnati on December 19th. I'm not going to sit here and count that as a win as a Bengals fan. I think we probably look at each other like those two teams. Like I guess I could ask you, do you think the Bengals are good? Because I don't think the Browns are good. I think the Browns have Jameis Winston and they're better, but I still think they're a bad team. As an outside person, do you look at the Bengals and say I'm scared of that game?
Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase I'll always pick them over anyone that they're fighting for those final spots. But when you just take that out of the equation, Cincinnati's not playing good. Do I think they're good? Yes. They're not playing good. I think the offense is playing bad. I think that offense is good. I don't know what's going on. 3 straight weeks of that. Now, you could say they've played good defenses, but that's also a problem because guess what happens when you make the playoffs? You face good defenses. So that's kind of a problem that, okay, we can only beat up on the bad teams, but we can't function offensively against good teams. I think that, or at least good defenses, I think that's a concern. I actually, not being a homer, Cleveland, I don't think they're as bad as people think. They got the full offensive line back.
They don't have a wide receiver.
I think
Tillman-
Cedric Tillman's the guy.
He's okay as of right now, but we don't know what he is yet.
But I think there's a lot of teams who are contending that don't have wide receivers. But I think Tillman is. I think we saw in the way that they ran that offense last week. I mean, everyone ate. He passed the ball around. It wasn't just locking in on one guy. I think that Nick Chubb being back, David Njoku back, and then the one most important factor, so the Bengals offense is why I lean them. But then the Browns defense with complementary offense, I want to pick them. But then you throw in the factor of the Bengals schedule. There's a lot of moving parts.
Bengals have 4 more teams in the schedule with a sub-500 record. The Browns only have 2.
And, I look at the Chargers game. That's why I think it comes down to this week. If the Browns win, and I'm going to pick them to win, I think that right now what we saw last week is what we saw with Joe Flacco last year, that this team can air it out. It's complemented by the run game, and then the defense has to go out and do its thing, of course. But they beat the Chargers, and they should beat the Saints in the next 2 weeks. And now all of a sudden you go 2-6. Now you're 3-6, 4-6, and it's a completely different ball game. And then Pittsburgh, that's going to be the real test. Cleveland has 6 losses. I think you have 2 more on the schedule. You can afford 2 more losses. The problem is you don't want 7 losses heading into November. Yeah. If you have 7 and 6 losses heading into November too, that makes it very unlikely. But they do have 2 losses to work with. You still have 2 with Pittsburgh. You have another with Cincinnati. You have Kansas City and another with Baltimore. It's unlikely. But the question is, which is more likely to finish in last? I guess just because the way that they shot themselves in the foot, a 1-6 start, I have to say Cleveland's more likely to finish in last. But man, Cincinnati would have been an easy one to pick Cleveland, but with their offense looking the way it has with the defensive problems the last 3 games, it's tough for me to feel confident even going up against bad teams for the Bengals at this point. So again, these 2 teams are battling it for last for a reason.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons on both. I just don't think Cleveland's as bad as I know you think they're bad. I don't see it. That offensive line, a lot of their problems early. Yes, that's why. And again, I'm not interested in getting in the shouting match back and forth.
No, I don't. The shouting matches are over now that the evil man is gone.
The bad man.
I text you. I like Jameis Winston. I'm not going to root against the Jameis Winston Browns. They're 2-6. I'm not exactly it doesn't benefit me to just say I want them to lose out. It would be funny, but it would I have no interest in that. I want to see Jameis Winston perform well. Obviously not against the Bengals, but against everybody else, I'm fine with.
He'll make his post-game interviews if he wins, so he has to keep winning.
Correct. I'm just saying that the Browns roster, as of this moment, isn't good enough to come back from 2-6, which means they're not a good enough team. They're a fine team. And they're certainly better. I think they're significantly better than they were 4 weeks ago with Deshaun Watson, 100%. And they're gonna upset a bunch of these teams. They're not gonna. I bet they finish with 8 wins, 7 or 8 wins is what I have the Browns finishing. I think the Bengals still finish with 8 or 9. I think the Bengals are just 1 game better just because of that easier schedule. That's all. I think the Bengals have the 2 better players, being Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, as you mentioned, on the offensive side of the football.
Fair enough.
Defense is a joke, but.
Man, you go to Deshaun, or you go to Jameis 2 weeks earlier, and this.
Oh, if you go to Jameis 2 weeks earlier, I'm picking the Browns to finish above the Bengals,
and even 1 week earlier, because not just the additional win, but the win over Cincinnati.
Yeah.
In this,
they threw their season. The Cleveland Browns threw their season away. 1,000,000%. They intentionally and willingly said, you know what, we're going to go with the least amount of wins possible this season. That's what we're going to do when we play Deshaun Watson. You have an option that's going to win you football games. You have an option that's going to lose you football games. We're going with the loser.
I'll give them credit. For a while, I thought they picked the worst quarterback on their roster to start. DTR might be worse. So at least they didn't start the worst quarterback for the first few weeks. But if you would have started Winston, if Winston would have been backing up Deshaun against the Bengals, that's no doubt in my mind that's a win for the Browns.
Yeah, DTR was not. And I get everyone's like, well, you have to see what you have with him. Cool. Start him fresh in a game. Don't throw him out at halftime in a game. Like that just – no. But – again, Jameis has been named the starter for the rest of the season.
That's great, yeah.
Well, I mean, you lose to the Chargers, though. Let's say if the Browns lose to the Chargers and Jameis plays well in that game. would it be kind of dumb not to dangle him out there to see if you can get a third rounder or fourth rounder for him, right? Like, what do you do if you're Cleveland in that situation?
If Jameis beats the Chargers, I might not play him the rest of the year. I mean, you have to try to trade him. Winning games is not a good thing for the Browns right now.
Oh, I think it is.
You do?
I think here's why. You guys talk a lot about the Joe Burrow window. Well, the window in Cleveland right now is closing more and more, and that window is Myles Garrett. You have Myles Garrett and you have Nick Chubb.
But
David
if you
Njoku,
could get to the
guys
playoffs and make some noise, then maybe. But I don't think you can get in. So you would just be playing for like pride and spoiler.
But if you win this week, look at the teams ahead of them, though. I think we're so caught up on the 2 wins. But, like, look what's ahead. Everyone that they're battling it out for the playoffs, they're a game behind. They're a game behind the Bengals. They're a game behind, or 2 games, let's just say.
Yeah.
But they closed that gap. I think right now that's why it was so crucial this past weekend when the Dolphins lost, when the Jets lost, when the Bengals lost, when the Colts lost. All of those teams could have gone up 3 games with the win over Cleveland, and I'd be all in on just moving on from every piece possible. But they opened that door with Cleveland's win over Baltimore. You get another win this weekend, it's a completely different outlook.
You'd have to go, what, 7-8-1?
Don't get me wrong, it would be difficult, but 9 teams in the AFC right now are 500 or worse, and there's only one 500 team. So I'm not gonna rule it out. Now he's speaking as a fan. Obviously, it's a little bit different. I think if you were the front office and you're trying to get draft capital back to try and save or revive or maybe start a new direction with the franchise, right? I think at that point, and it was clear that they wanted to do that anyway when you saw Deshaun Watson stink up the field for 6 games. But yeah, at this point, they're not out of the playoffs. If they win 2 in a row, they're more than fine.
And here's the other thing.
I'm pretty comfortable saying the Browns are out of the playoffs.
They're a game behind your team.
I said the Bengals are out of the playoffs.
And I think so. Okay.
I'm not wishy-washy.
I do
here.
want to argue today with anyone. I'm not in the mood today.
I'm
I
just
promise.
saying,
I'm not
Bengals
trying to
are
pick a
also
fight.
eliminated.
Wow,
So-
you're out on Cincinnati as a whole. They're not.
Bengals are not making the playoffs. 0%.
Who's
chance.
better? Who are you confident in filling those final spots then?
In the AFC? I
Yeah.
think the Chargers are a playoff team.
Okay, I
That's
agree.
what's worrying me about this week. I want to count them out, but they pissed me off with that win this past week.
I think the Chargers are a playoff team. I think the Steelers are a playoff team.
I agree.
And then I would honestly probably pick the Colts to figure it out.
I don't think
Because Anthony Richardson, if you watch Anthony Richardson's tape, it looks much better than that box score. He's going to be he's a good player. I still have faith in him.
The last point on this too, the other reason I don't see them moving on from you need a quarterback.
That's true.
And you could still draft one, yes, but at the same time, I think for one, I do believe that Tillman emerging the last 2 weeks is key. If Tillman has another huge game against the Chargers this weekend, now I think Cleveland has a new identity. It's Jameis with Tillman as the number 1, with Jerry Jeudy as the 2, and then, of course, Nick Chubb and David Njoku. And I think you go to war with that. And I think you do everything you can because I don't think it's just about getting hot for the rest of this season. I think that's your team next year, too. I think Cleveland comes back with this full roster for one more full year. Myles Garrett's going nowhere. They've come out and said that already. To me, if it sounds like they're moving on from Myles Garrett, yeah, you blow it up at that point. I'm surprised at how down on the Bengals you are. I get that they're coming off that loss against the Eagles. I'm just surprised you've checked out on them as much as you have.
I look at the schedule and I just don't see any better than 8 or 9 wins, and I don't think either of those get you in.
9 wins. There will be a 9 win.
Yeah, I'm
A 9-win playoff team, absolutely. Not for a team like the Bengals with 3 conference losses already. No shot. You won't have the tiebreakers. Bengals have to win 10.
All right. Casey, what about
Maybe
you?
unless you beat the Chargers.
Are you as out on the Bengals playoff chances as these guys are? Or not really these guys, but Jacob?
I'm not as out because when I look at the playoff and I look at the conference record for the teams that are wild card teams, they all have 2 or 3 losses as well. So, I mean, they're right there with the Bengals in terms of conference losses. Now, they can't afford to lose an AFC game, period. But, I mean, we were already in that boat anyways to begin with if that team wants to make it to the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's doable. I just don't think it's I think it's doable. I think it's possible. I just think that they have to win against the Broncos. They have to beat the Chargers. They have to beat the Ravens at least once. You got to beat Pittsburgh at least once or twice. You can't lose to the Browns. Like there's just like games you can't afford to lose. Otherwise, you will drop. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Bengals. Luckily for them, like a lot of these teams all play each other. Colts will play, I think, Denver and the Chargers. I think we play, of course, Denver and the Chargers as well. Excuse me. So there's a lot of overlapping games that we can afford, that we can make up ground and also push them down the board as well. So I'm not so out on the Bengals playoff chances as those guys are.
I'm not out on the Bengals playoff chances. It's just you're asked, like, the next 4 games, you have to win those games. You have to win all of them. That's where the disconnect is, and I don't think they can win all of them. I don't think they've shown this season that they're capable of winning 4 games in a row. I've not seen anything close to that. So I think they'll beat the Raiders. I think they'll go to Baltimore and they'll lose. I think they'll have a chance against the Chargers. I mean that defense.
That's a game that you have to win.
The crazy thing with me being out on the Bengals playoff chances is I think they're going to beat Baltimore on Thursday night.
Do you?
Yeah.
So if they do that, they win those 2 games. You get back to 500.
Ran out of the gym by the Chargers.
Okay. Then Steelers at home.
Loss.
Then it's over at that point.
That's it, right. And that's where I'm at. I think they're going to win these next 2 games, and I'm going to be sitting here after that Thursday night win against the Ravens. I'm going to be all the way back in.
God,
all the way back in at
reminds me
5
so
and 5.
much of the Reds.
I know.
I'm getting July vibes.
It's the same thing
Damn.
over and over. And the only reason the Bengals have a chance is because the rest of the AFC sucks. Time is a flat circle of pain and suffering.
It's like a circle.
Kinner, I just want my teams to be good at some point. It's all I want.
And you know what I want? Here's what I want. I want my team to be good while your team is bad. That's what I want.
Okay. that's not
I
too
think
much
you
to
wanted
ask
the
for.
same thing. And you got to, like, your team beat my team last week, but it's like you didn't really get to relish in it too long because it didn't look good, and then you lose this. No one's happy.
No one's happy.
I can't be happy. You can't be happy.
No one's happy.
No one's happy. That's why we've been yelling a lot the last couple
That's
weeks.
right.
You know?
Jacob, do you take a little bit of responsibility saying that before the year they could start 0-6 and then they got as close to that as possible?
I take no responsibility because that's not what I said.
Yeah, this is what you said.
Because we can go back and the 3.
You did say
You did say that.
I said an 0-6 start wouldn't have me out on the team, which is true because after 1 and 5, I was still in.
0-6, he's not out, but 3 and 5.
1 and 4, I was still in. 3 and 5, I'm out.
And that
See?
science.
See? It's just math. Carry the ones, Elliot.
I'm carrying them. I'm carrying them to the garbage.
All I have to say is cheers to the very bad AFC
Yeah.
at this point, nonetheless. And let me be fair here to answer. What's more likely, the Browns or Bengals to finish last? I still think I have to roll with the Browns finishing in last, but I do think the last place team is an 8-win team in this division. I think the division's back to being competitive from the top down, but you have 2 teams in the Browns and Bengals that shot themselves in the foot at the halfway point of the season. So who knows? And by the way, I feel like you're Bengals fans, I'm a Browns. I still feel like a bad fan. I really like Pittsburgh. I really like the Steelers.
Yeah.
I really like Russell Wilson. I really like that offense now. I hate TJ Watt. Actually, I probably hate TJ Watt more than anybody. But yeah, the
I'm in a
Steelers
good
defense,
spot with the Steelers' good players outside of Najee, who's like not really that good anymore. Now that Fields isn't starting, I hate all the Steelers' good players, which is really, really a good place to be. I mean, George Pickens is a punk. I hate him so much. Russell Wilson's 50 and washed, and he's deciding to be good. When I finally get out on him, that stinks. And then Jalen Warren steals touches from Najee, so I hate him. So it's wonderful. It works great. And TJ Watt, dirtiest player in the league.
By the way, you got to get 2
People
feet
forget.
in. You got to get 2 feet in. Did you see this play last
2
night?
feet in, but 1 foot twice doesn't count. 1 knee counts as 2 feet. You got that?
I got it. Carry the 1.
That's right.
Science.
It happened twice to him, right? In that game?
Couple
last
weird.
night?
They had 3 touchdowns called back
Yeah.
or reversed, right?
Yeah, should have been 4 because the running into the kicker on the punt return that just wasn't called.
What is this, Kansas City?
Pass rusher decks or punt blocker decks the punter on Calvin Austin's
Really?
punt return touchdown, no flag in a game where they threw flags for everything.
Everything. They
Pittsburgh.
called a delay of game yesterday, and it was the quickest delay of game call I've ever seen in my life. Usually, and I think it was Joe Buck who kind of explained it on the broadcast, where it's once it hits 0,
You give it a beat.
You give it a beat, look at the quarterback, and then whistle, flag. This was like 0, flag, boom. It was like, I mean, it was delay of game by the rule, but it was quick.
Yeah, Steelers with
Also,
Russ look a little different.
illegal shift, illegal motion, that stuff's nonsense. Stop calling that.
You think the Steelers get in on Devontae Adams now?
Yeah, maybe.
You know, you never know. They're always in on something. All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wingham and Dayton. One more scenario we'll get into when we come back. A little baseball, talk a little Cincinnati Reds, Cleveland Guardians. Which team is more likely to outspend the other this upcoming offseason? Everyone knows I love beating up on the Guardians. 5 straight years, finishing near the bottom in payroll. Unacceptable. You just can't do this. A team that was in the AFC football on the mind, but nonetheless, AL Championship Series. But we'll get to all of that coming up next. This is Off the Bench. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, and ESPN 1410 Wingham and Dayton. Do us a favor, please hit like. I say this every day. I know y'all don't like me. I read the comments. It's totally fine. You're not hurting my feelings at all. But you will hurt my feelings if you don't support these dudes over here, all right? Support Casey McAllister, Elliott Rearing, Jacob Tissett, Trace, and Reed, and everybody. Hit like on the stream, please. We beyond appreciate it. We have fun every day doing this show, but we can't keep doing the show unless you guys like this and help it grow. So we appreciate you nonetheless. But all right, one more likely scenario as we sit here again on this Tuesday. I think we need to get off the Bengals talk just for Jacob's mental health, and I have to make sure we protect
Speaking of Bengals talk, Chatterbox Bengals tonight at 6 p.m., 6 to 7.
Oh.
Chatterbox Bengals.
But wait, on Thursday we have another Chatterbox Bengals
right.
show.
Where is it?
That's funny you ask. It's at Champions Grill. Champions Grill on Work Road. So come see us. We're live and in person. It'll be myself, Casey, and Jacob. 7 o'clock live at Champions. It'll be the Halloween Spectacular.
I will be in costume. I don't know what yet, but I will be in costume.
The Halloween Spooktacular.
Back to you, Kenner.
And you will feel a little bit better about the team by Thursday,
Maybe.
right?
Maybe.
No. Just got to talk it through.
Yeah, I'm sure watching film tonight will be great.
Nonetheless. Hey, before we get into this baseball story, or not really story, but scenario, if you will, high school football. Are you guys familiar with Marion Local? Maria Stein?
You have made me familiar.
So they beat Coldwater this past week. Okay, cool, whatever. They have won a state record now, 58 straight games. From 2021 to now, they have not lost a game. That is pretty dang impressive, right?
That's crazy.
That is a state record. And then here's where and again, they're the Marion Local Flyers. But I guess it's the 33rd. It ranks 33rd in the nation, in the country, as far as the longest high school winning streak right here in the state of Ohio. Now, that's cool. That's super. Some of you guys don't care about Marion Local. That's great. But you guys will care about this. You guys like winning money, right?
I sure do.
So they do this humongous 50-50 drawing every single year for that. And they did it this past weekend with that Coldwater game. And the previous high, was $17,000. Someone came away with $17,000. The winner this past week, $22,000. You go to support your local high school football athletes, and you go home with $22,000.
Surely these are massive schools.
Oh my gosh, no! I think this is about the size of the graduating class that's in here right now.
That's incredible.
So how much are they selling tickets for this thing? It can't be like a $5 split the pot ticket. How are you getting to $22,000?
I don't have all the information. Shame on me.
20 people bought $1,000 split the pot ticket.
Would be electric.
That'd be sick.
$22,000.
Well, that means they got $44,000 total. If the winner walked away with $22,000.
Yeah.
Man.
They have to be $100 tickets.
That's insanity.
They have to be $100 tickets.
I am curious about that now. I'm going to have to do a little bit of research to see what the price of this 50-50, because I think every year we need to be going to that game.
Yeah, no, we will be going to that game now.
100%.
Yeah,
no
question.
question.
But all right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Last one here on the way out, on the radio side at least. More likely. The Guardians and Reds, two teams that, well, they're not really known for spending money. I think that the Reds have proven that they're willing to spend more from time to time than the Guardians, especially in recent history. But as we approach this offseason, you have two teams here in the state of Ohio. You have one team that just got to the American League Championship Series with the Cleveland Guardians. And while some look at it as a great storyline, near the bottom in spending for 5 straight years. For 5 straight years, they have not financially invested into this team. They do a great job with their scouting department. They do a great job in their farm system. They develop. They win games at the end of the day. That's really what it comes down to. But to me, I always look at it as you win a lot of games without investing into your roster. Imagine what would happen if you would invest into your roster. Now, again, that's a tired talking point. We spend a lot of time on it. But as you head into this offseason, you got to the American League Championship Series with being towards the bottom of the league in spending. Surely you would like to think that, okay, we're a good baseball team. We could just return it as is and see if we can run it back. Or let's take what we did and let's build on it. Let's add. Let's spend money and let's really go all in and not just get to the AL Championship Series and be a good story. Let's let the good story be get to the World Series and win the whole damn thing. If you were the Cincinnati Reds, who have just been a joke for quite some time. You think you're close, you get close, and then you remind everybody that you're just a poorly run organization. Now, they kind of put that to rest a little bit when they shocked everybody when they go make Terry Francona, name him their new manager. And I think that brings a different vibe and a different feel to the Cincinnati Reds organization. This is a future Hall of Fame manager that's won multiple World Series and wins everywhere he goes. The expectation is that now this Reds team will win with Terry Francona, and you have a superstar in Elly De La Cruz and a Cy Young caliber pitcher to build around, and of course Hunter Green. So the question is, with both of these teams, they're at different levels of where they're at roster construction wise, but the expectation is the exact same. Compete to win their division, compete for the playoffs, compete for a World Series. But to do that, you have to spend some money, and these are two franchises who traditionally don't. So I set this up for you guys, who's more likely to outspend the other team this offseason. Who's more likely to outspend the other, the Reds or the Guardians? I'll let whoever start.
It comes down to who's had more success using their method. The Guardians don't spend money, and they always get to the playoffs. They always have successful postseason runs. The Reds don't spend money, and they lose, and they're losers. And they've been a loser organization for the better part of 30 years. So it comes down to you have Terry Francona for 3 years, roughly. You have Elly De La Cruz for like 4 years, roughly. Matt McClain, same timetable. You're desperate. The Cincinnati Reds are at a point where they are desperate, and they're going to operate desperately for the next couple of seasons, which means they're going to spend more money than the Cleveland Guardians. It's more likely that the Reds go all in, make some bad moves, fill an outfield, and try to win over these next couple of seasons. The Guardians are under no pressure whatsoever. The Guardians do whatever they want. They sign one of the best players in Major League Baseball for a team-friendly deal. The team's still fine around him. I think the Guardians are perfectly content in their way of doing business. The Cincinnati Reds, they've tried to spend money. They've tried to not spend money. Everything the Reds do, they lose. So they're going to try to probably go back into that the spending money train, which I'm okay with. I like the Reds to spend money. And we'll see what happens. But you have 3 years of Terry Francona. They are going to try to make the most of it, which means they are not going to have Terry Francona manage a 60-win, $400,000 roster. That's not what's going to happen here. He's going to manage a sizable roster, financially speaking. I think they're going to spend over $125 million. I think their roster was $100 million this year, maybe. Pretty sure that's right. Almost. That's almost certain. I'm almost certain that's right. I bet they get close to doubling it. Yeah, I bet they get close to doubling that.
Yeah, I would say the Reds are going to outspend the Guardians because I know what would happen in Cincinnati if we made an ALCS. Or I guess it would be NLCS for us. But if you make a CS, it would be, hey, look at this. We did this. No big free agent bats because we made a CS. So I assume that's what's going to happen in Cleveland. You make a great point that their system's been working, so why would they change it? I think the Terry Francona move leads me to believe that even if the Reds aren't going to go get big-name guys and spend a lot, they are going to spend and try to improve this team. Otherwise, you don't hire a manager like that. So I'm pretty confident in saying the Reds.
So the Reds spent a team record $165 million heading into 2020. And that was that year that they go get Castellanos and Moustakas and, Shogo Akiyama, during that stretch as well as when they had traded for, why am I drawing a blank? The former Guardians pitcher won the Cy Young. Why am I drawing a blank? I was off to a good start.
Shane Bieber?
No.
Bauer?
There we go.
Oh, the
Trevor
Reds.
Bauer.
The Reds.
Yeah, making the trade for Sonny Gray. To the Reds' credit, and again, we shouldn't give the front office a lot of credit, but to their credit, back in 20 or 19, I should say, when they felt that they were ready to pull the trigger, if it wasn't for that offseason, I don't think I would have any confidence in them being willing to spend money. I think that what they are doing is being very selective of when they spend that money. And I think that we've seen, or at least based on one occasion, when the Reds front office felt like, okay, if we invest into this roster and we go make these additions, I think we can go win baseball games. I think now's the time to do it. To their credit, I believe in recent history, they have shown that they're willing to financially go in. Not all in, but I just said financially go in. $165 million. Can you imagine what this Reds roster would look like? $165 million payroll when you have guys on the cheap like Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo and Andrew Abbott. And you have, obviously, and that's just on the pitching side. When you start looking at Ellie De La Cruz and Spencer Steer, even the Jonathan Indias of the world and those veteran guys like that, I think you all of a sudden, I don't even expect them to get to the $165 million. But, man, imagine if this was that $165 million offseason. What that would mean for the Cincinnati Reds, what that would mean for this roster. I think it's more likely that the Reds outspend the Guardians just because I think the Guards will spend some money more than they have in recent years, but I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to put them in the top half of the league by any means. But I think that the Reds are in a situation where you can't just take this as is into next season. The Guardians can, because the Guardians could at least take a team that went to the ALCS and say, if we don't make one change, we're good enough to compete with the best in baseball. The Reds can't say that. So they can't just count on bringing the same roster back and just counting on being healthy. Now, they could. I'm hoping they don't.
They could.
I think that because
that's the best part about being a Reds fan. They certainly
they
could.
Might, yeah.
They might run it back.
But because
they got hurt this year.
Like Jacob's point, again, you don't bring in Terry Francona to do that. At least I would like to think so. So now Terry Francona says they don't even talk about it. That wasn't even something that was discussed. I don't believe. I love Terry Francona. I don't believe one word he says when he said, "Oh, we didn't even talk about that." Yes, you did. Yes, you did. But nonetheless, yeah, the Reds will outspend the Guardians. But the Reds have proven in recent history that when they feel the timing is right, that they'll go ahead and go that extra mile. Man, I would love to see 165 spent on this team. I just don't think it's going to happen. But why 19 would you do it when you had nothing? And you wouldn't do it now when you have pillars. Like, you have pillars to spend around now. You didn't back then in 19. I hope that they have that same realization.
I think what happened was the Reds front office and or ownership saw the excitement that came with Ellie De La Cruz, and that's an excitement that they've probably never seen as owners of this team. And they're like, we want to see more of that. We want to capitalize that. And what happened last year was a very big disappointment. Whether or not it's because of the injuries, roster construction, whatever you want to say, they were probably very, very disappointed and frustrated. So they're going to try to make as many moves to appease this fan base to get everybody excited as possible, which means they're going to spend money this offseason, in my opinion.
I hope you're right, because honestly, that's all we can do at this point is hope that they do. Because how many times now have we seen that it's been, or at least suggested that it's been a perfect opportunity for them to spend money and bolster this roster, and they haven't done it over the years. So it certainly seems like a great opportunity. Makes sense for them, too. I hope they do.
All right, and there you go. And that wraps it up. On the radio side, this has been Off the Bench.
What did you learn today?
Presented by United Dairy Farmers. A wise man once asked, "What did you learn today?"
Did you see the Andrew Whitworth interview that kind of went viral yesterday?
Yeah,
That's an old interview.
Stinker.
It's an old interview. Am I allowed to ask to play it?
Why? It's 4 minutes long.
I know, but I want to play it. Like, I
You
just
do not need to play it.
why?
What do you want to talk about with it?
I just wanted to play it.
It's been out. And
It's been
been
out
viral
for
a
years.
couple
I know.
times.
I know. I'm aware of that. I just wanted to play it.
It's very, to your point, it's telling.
Yeah,
I think it's
you
very
talked about
telling. I think some Bengals fans have seen this, but I know why you want to share it. It is interesting hearing
In case
him kinda
those who
share.
haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We don't have to. I think that it does say a lot about how they used to be run. I don't think they're maybe like that now, exactly like that at least. I hope not. But it is clear that the way they used to do business was not player focused. I mean, they didn't really care about who was on the team. So that's at least what I took away from that interview.
I think it's a team that has the same mindset they have now, and a focus that you move on from guys that are 30 plus. And Whitworth was 33, and he was playing at a high level at the time, obviously. But in an era where you really didn't have a whole lot to compete big picture, I mean, it stinks that Whitworth went somewhere else and was able to eat the Bengals alive in a Super Bowl and still play at such a high level for a long time. But that is a massive outlier. And would I have loved for him to handle that situation a lot better? Yes. Does a player deserve more respect than drafting their replacement behind their back? Absolutely. But is it the wrong decision to continue to operate and move on from 30-plus-year-old players, especially in the trenches, when you don't operate with a very cash-rich philosophy or ownership and you struggle to pay guys anyway? Maybe locking down elderly players at the end of their career isn't the best decision. And we've seen it work for the Bengals time and time again. It stinks that Whitworth's example was a bad one because of what he did for the city and how much he meant and how long he was able to succeed elsewhere afterwards. But time and time again, we've seen players over 30 fall off in the NFL. And I don't think that it's a recipe for the Bengals that is one that is going to be the wrong decision more often than not. I think moving on from guys that are 30-plus is more often than not going to be the right decision. Whitworth's obviously was not. It looked even worse when he was on the left tackle position for the Rams in the Super Bowl, eating the Bengals alive, doing his job to the highest of his abilities like he did in Cincinnati, like he said he was going to be able to do until he retired, and he did, which stunk. But, I mean, we've seen the Bengals move off from a lot of older guys that haven't panned out elsewhere. So a very painful example for sure. But I still think in the big picture, it's the right decision to not extend to these older guys.
So, Elliot, the last time that this interview kind of made its rounds, it was around the time that Trey Hendrickson had requested the trade, and that there were some reports coming out that he had kind of mulled over retirement. Well, the reason that this interview had started to make its rounds is because he talks in there that he had threatened retirement and these types of things. So it put the Bengals in that spot, which coincidentally lined up with right around the time that Trey Hendrickson did this. So the scenarios were almost mirroring one another, almost as if he had kind of asked Whitworth for advice of how to handle this particular situation. But yeah, that's popped up a few times, but that is an interesting story. And I don't think that that's a Bengals only story. I think a lot of players are handled that way with their respective teams. Not everything is always handled on the up and up, if you will. But it's only alarming just because that's one of their star pillar players in the last decade. And then, and then like Jacob said, more times than not, when you move on from those guys, like the Carlos Dunlaps of the world and the Atkins of the world, those guys never.
DJ Reader.
Have we heard of those guys since?
Yeah.
No. The Bengals actually don't get credit for moving away from those guys. But at the time, though, I remember, Bengals, what are you doing? How you can move on from Carlos Dunlap? Geno Atkins? I thought that was ridiculous. The Reader thing, I didn't mind it just because they had replaced him with Rankins, who's basically the same player, just with a little bit more explosiveness. So I didn't mind that. That made sense. But
Reader's like not even playing in Detroit either.
Yeah.
He's a completely rotational guy who's not getting that many snaps and isn't having that great a production. And that just leads you back to the circle, a guy that tears his quad and you let him leave after he's been rehabbing in the facility for so long at 30-plus. Maybe, again, a decision Bengals fans didn't like at the time, but extending 30-plus-year-old trenches players usually don't work out.
And not even just that, but like the Tyler Boyds, the A.J. Greens. There's been players and even with this Joe Mixon thing. I think Joe Mixon and Whitworth, all different types of positions, as you've just broke down. Joe Mixon and Whitworth might be the only two that they've moved on in that particular situation where you're like, yeah, maybe we moved on a little too soon. I understood contractually why they didn't bring back the safety.
Jesse Bates.
And Jesse Bates. That was just reallocated fund. They had a different plan for the money as far as that goes. But yeah, more times than not, the Bengals win those scenarios. But when things are going bad in Cincinnati, those interviews make the rounds to try to make them look bad. And here I am defending.
We'll see this one again in the offseason when Jamar gets a holdout or whatever route he takes for this contract extension that's going to happen this offseason. I'm sure we'll see this interview again. It's one that's going to hang over the Bengals' head forever as long as they have good players and aren't extending them in a timely manner. I think it's just going to keep coming around, and we'll see what happens because they were able to get Joe Burrow done at the wire, so hopefully they can do it with the rest of the guys and get these contracts done, and then it can all go by the wayside because we had this whole Bengals cheap ownership conversation that whole summer when Joe Burrow was up and we didn't think they were going to get the extension done, didn't know what was happening there, and then right before kickoff, they get it done, and maybe that's what's going to happen with the rest of these contracts, and the Bengals are going to end up spending money. And I keep seeing people say that the front office might treat Zach Taylor and this coaching staff and all this window differently than the Marvin Lewis era because they're actually financially invested this time. They're paying Joe Burrow. They weren't paying Andy Dalton a whole lot of money. A.J. Green was really the only big-time contract on that team. How financially invested are they if they don't sign Jamar Chase or T. Higgins or anyone on the defense?
I agree.
You're only paying Joe Burrow. That's not a lot of financial investment when you talk big picture roster spending. Mm-hmm. This team needs to give us a reason to believe that they are financially committed, and that comes this offseason with extensions and spending to fill holes on the defense. We're going to find out very quickly how committed this team is to winning and how much they just want to use Joe Burrow as an attraction and fill the stadium.
Yeah, we'll see. I also think this conversation always brings up the fact that there needs to be some sort of ownership cap or restriction, or like if you're not willing to spend money, this goes like to baseball too. If you're not willing to spend money, or if you don't have enough money, and maybe that's what it is, then you shouldn't own a team. And I know why the Browns own it, but at the same time, it's like I'm tired of the money issue always becoming a factor. And I know that's how sports works, so I'm just complaining into the abyss. But seeing the Dodgers and the Yankees, two $300 million rosters, asterisk $1 billion because Shohei's money comes in 2072. But seeing those rosters go out there and dominate in the World Series, and then seeing the Reds, LOL.
How many players on the Reds would start for the Dodgers?
Pitchers included?
Yeah. Would Ellie even start at shortstop?
Yeah.
Over Mookie?
Yeah. Well, Mookie would.
Well, I'm saying don't move him.
Mookie would play a different position.
I'm saying don't move him. Mookie's the shortstop.
Okay, then no, you wouldn't play. You wouldn't play over Mookie.
That's what I'm saying. So you probably have the Reds rotation because the Dodgers literally don't have starters.
They don't have a pitcher.
Right.
That's about it.
So you have 3 guys, and then maybe Ellie if you're allowed to move Mookie to the outfield. It's just great. Like that just shows you how far away we really are.
Yeah.
And that's not just the Reds. It's a lot of teams in the MLB. I mean, the Diamondbacks made it to the World Series last year, and you can do the same thing going down their lineup and the Rangers lineup. And I mean, the Rangers spent over $300 million and got a World Series team. So it's just frustrating, and this is another example. This World Series is another example that a $300 million payroll does not guarantee you a ring, but not having one guarantees you won't.
Gosh, I guess being a Reds fan is like being Indiana
football
fan. Like we're hoping just wild card or to win winning the divisions, like getting to the Big Ten championship game.
College football and the MLB are very similar.
We're not even talking. They kind of are. We're
very
not even
similar.
Like Indiana fans aren't saying, "Man, we might be good enough to win a national championship." You know, you're not. Reds fans, we might be good enough to win a World Series. We know we're not. We're just doing this weird thing. We're like,
can we get in and have some fun?
Can we get an 85 to 90 win team and get in the wild card? And you know what I mean? Like, yeah. We gather with our friends at a sports bar, everyone cheer in unison, and just have a good time for a couple days. Like
Yankees, Dodgers, Mets, Braves, or like Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State.
Yep.
And then the rest of the teams are the UCs, the Indianas. You hope for your playoff shot, and once you get it, you hang the banner and you love it. And if the Reds ever made a CS or anything like that, it would be the greatest day of my life.
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about winning a World Series. You win a wild card series would be the greatest day of my life. So it's crazy in the NFL, or not the NFL, in the MLB, how different the goalposts are for the teams. And I think, for the teams' fan bases, I mean. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's the biggest discrepancy of any major pro sport by a mile.
100%.
All right, Ohio State, what is their MLB comp?
Well, I think it would be the Yankees. The Yankees won in 2009, haven't won since, but they still win. Yep. Buckeyes won in 2014. Everyone hates them, but they haven't won in a decade.
See, some would say the Mets, because the Mets put all that money on that roster. But no, it's not the Mets. Who's a team that's like new to this that just threw a lot of money at it to build it back? I mean, Colorado's not good enough to put them in that conversation. But like teams
I would say Georgia, but they've won 2 championships.
Yep.
Georgia's the Dodgers.
I think the Mets are Penn State.
Okay.
Always have expectations every year and never get there. Always fall short.
Michigan
Michigan
spent all that money 1 year.
The Astros.
Won 100 games.
Astros.
Yeah, Michigan is the Astros. That's such a layup.
Both cheated to win the championship.
That's such a layup. That was
easy. We didn't even mean to do that. But
no, that was a layup.
People don't forget.
Perfect.
People don't forget. Anything else before we wrap up here today? Do you guys have what do you guys have coming up? You got box lunch. You got Chatterbox Bengals later tonight.
Chatterbox Bengals tonight. 6p, 6 to 7p. Me and Craigo.
There you go.
Hopefully we'll find some good things to talk about. Probably not.
I doubt it.
Probably not.
I doubt it.
But it'll be fun.
You're going to try your best.
That's right.
Final World Series games tonight, right?
The final.
Well, maybe. Maybe not.
Yeah.
By the way, you see how bad Aaron Judge has been.
Oh, it makes me so happy.
They're booing him.
They're booing him. They're burning jerseys.
Did you see
him burning jerseys?
I did see that. Did you see the John Sterling call of the missed home run? Mm-mm. So John Sterling is the king of calling home runs that aren't home runs. and he saw Aaron Judge take a hack at it yesterday, and it looked the swing did look like it was gone. And he stood in at the plate and looked at it a little bit. It was the most routine fly ball of all time.
Oh, no.
Not even close to the warning track.
No.
And John Sterling got all excited and lost his voice over it. It was very, very funny.
Giancarlo Stanton can't run
Giancarlo Stanton cannot run.
at all.
Nope.
That's a fun little
Tough.
quirk.
That was a tough send.
It seemed like the third base coach might not have known that, though.
I think it was lost on him a
Because
little bit.
the outfielder had the ball in his hand,
Yeah.
and they waved. And they need to get him a wheelchair or something. That's tough to watch.
Let me ask you this: if they're able to come back, if the Yankees are able to come back from 3-0, and it's because of Giancarlo Stanton, he hits like 3 more home runs in the series. Do they love him more than anybody?
Probably.
In the last 25 years, 20 years? No, when 2009, so 20 years.
Anyone that wins them this World Series, they'd love more than everyone but Jeter. I
fair.
think. Down 3-0.
Yeah.
Because that would get the Red Sox monkey off their back.
Yep.
Aaron Judge hitting throughout this postseason, hitting 140. He does have 2 home runs, 6 RBIs. His OPS is at 580, 20 strikeouts. But the World Series is 1 for 12 with 7 strikeouts in 3 games.
Ooh.
That's fun.
They call that the Will Benson.
He's at that point, like A-Rod did this with the Yankees for a while, where very good during the regular season and would just completely disappear. And then the best run he had, coincidentally, was the last time the Yankees won a World Series. So, who knows?
That was one of the knocks on Votto, too. The 2 times Votto made the playoffs, everybody got real mad at him when he didn't show up.
Speaking of Joey Votto, Chess.com has released a Joey Votto bot.
Really?
You can now play against Joey Votto in chess on Chess.com.
Votto's a chess guy.
That's right. He's a big chess guy. One of the
You guys-
highest rated
are you a
professional
chess
athletes
guy?
on Chess.com, I believe. I am not a chess guy. I think it's
Also-
very cool to be able to play chess, though.
Also, the Bengals game against
Oh,
the...
yeah.
What was it against the... Which Bengals game is going to be the Simpsons game?
Cowboys. Monday Night Football against the Cowboys on December 9th.
That will be a Simpsons simulcast, I guess. I guess they're going to do the Nickelodeon
On
thing.
Disney Plus.
So good luck.
If the Bengals are, so the Bengals play 1, 2, 3, 4 games before the Cowboys game. If the Bengals have less than 5 wins, I will watch the Simpsons game on the stream.
Yeah?
Because this season will be a joke if the Bengals are 3-7, 4-6. So Simpsons game on the stream if the Bengals have under 5 wins.
It would be so funny.
All right, well, that wraps it up for us. Any closing thoughts on our way out?
What did you learn today?
Oh, you were doing that. I don't know what I learned today. I did learn today that Jacob's broken.
Broken.
That Jacob's broken. I think that's what I learned. I was surprised to hear how broken he was when it comes to his Bengals, to be honest.
I learned that soccer on the radio is vastly more exciting than on TV.
Yeah, leaves you on the edge of your seat.
Car seat.
Yeah, car seat.
What did you learn, Casey?
I learned that the Penn State Nittany Lions are the Mets.
There you go.
That was an interesting.
That was interesting.
take. Yeah. What did you guys say Ohio State was again?
Yankees.
The Yankees? Yeah, that checks out.
Spend a lot of money, not a whole lot to show
Don't
for it.
win. Yeah.
I also learned that it's going to take the Bengals to time travel to fix their team. That's the other thing I learned.
Yeah. I learned that I'm really out on the Bengals. I didn't realize how out I was on the Bengals till we were talking through it today. I'm really out
This
on
is
the
like
Bengals.
when the Reds got to the end of September, Jacob just stopped talking about them. We're almost there with the Bengals.
No.
We're almost there with the Bengals.
No.
It'll
I'm-
just switch to
We're
draft
three
talk.
straight. We're 3 straight losses away from Jacob just saying when we talk about the Bengals. Jacob does what he did with the Reds. They're not good. What do you want me to say?
No,
They're just not good.
we are.
They're
close.
not good.
We are close to getting there.
The only good news for Jacob is that he can't talk about the draft in the NFL.
I do
so
love the draft.
Draft talk will
Draft
come
is
up real soon.
Me and Jacob are going to have a good time. during draft
Casey
season.
and I might just start taking the back hour
Yeah.
of off the bench and just go and draft.
Just do full draft.
The
mocks.
Bengals season has gotten so bad at this point that Casey and I have started sending each other the production profiles of the prospects that we wanted the Bengals to take that are doing well elsewhere. So we're tracking down the guys that we thought the Bengals should take that are killing it while our guys are inactive.
That's a good segment for
And,
tomorrow.
yeah, we can do that.
There you
we
go.
We can all
Get it
cry
queued
together.
up.
We can all cry together. That'll be a good time.
Well, all right. Well, good stuff. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench.
Presented by
United Dairy Farmers. There you go.